Beautiful.
Wait, Suspected, check DM, Suspected.
Dude, bro, how long did that take you to make, bro? Oh, la ilaha illallah.
Yo, that's hilarious.
Says it's live for me already, bro. Says it's live for me already, bro.
Alright, go ahead, Ahmed, if you want to present a bit of intro.
All right, for everyone that's here, the main debate will be between Maverick and Suspected. Request everyone for the first part of this debate to let it be between just Suspected and Maverick. Let them go back and forth. And after they've concluded the debate, have questions come in. Pretty much it. So if we can start, Maverick, could you start with your view on Hajj for Suspected, please?
Yeah, and we'll have by the way, if anyone wants to post any Q&As, we don't have a specific channel for that, but do it in VC1 chat, and you can just ping admin or ping moderator when you post your questions, and inshallah we can address it from both sides. We don't have a specific channel for that, but do it in VC1 chat, and you can just ping admin.
You guys are not waiting for me, are you?
Yeah, no, waiting for you. So you go ahead. So go ahead and explain basically your view of Hajj to the audience and to me, basically, so we can clarify our views.
Okay, cool. Before I do that, any chance you guys can send me to the link to this so I can see it on my laptop or something? Is it already there? Now, just tell my guy to send me the link in the background, like in the chat. Ahmed is there, right?
Yeah, I'll send you it.
Yeah, send me the link. All right, cool. All right, basically, Hajj. Peace, everyone. First, all right. My take on this is basically, instead of simply arguing about what the word means, which just creates endless arguments, what I try to do is I try to look for consistent patterns in various verses, especially as it pertains to this word, for instance. So as it pertains to Hajj, what I found that I found two messengers in particular being associated with this word, and the messengers in question are Abraham and Muhammad. Now, those messengers, when they are associated with the word Hajj, what does the word Hajj seem to contain in those particular contexts? So what we find is, if we go to Surah Hajj, starting from verse 26 to, I think, 34, possibly over, what you will find is that Abraham calls the Hajj towards mankind, number one. So that is the first thing that I noticed, that he calls to Hajj for mankind rather than believers. So that was the first thing of note. And the second thing of note is that those people come to him rather than a particular place. They come to him wherever he's at. And they come to him in various transportation methods. So when they come to him, there are two things that they perform with the messenger. The two things in question are one, he slaughters an animal and he basically hosts them for basically for a feast. And the second thing he does with them is, as you would expect from a messenger, he conveys the message to them. So those are the three things I've noticed with Abraham. So one, he calls mankind rather than believers. Two, he basically feeds them and he conveys the message to them. And they come to wherever he's at. So those are the things that I've noticed with Abraham, and the fact that he's a messenger. Now I've noticed the same thing with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before people beef me, what's it called? Yeah, I noticed the same thing with Prophet Muhammad, namely that he performs Hajj when he goes back home. Let's just say Mecca for argument's sake, and the people residing in Mecca are basically they're not Muslims. They haven't heard the message yet because the messenger was persecuted simply for spreading the message in the first place. So now that he comes back, he does two things with them. He feeds them. Just like Prophet Abraham, he slaughters an animal and he feeds them. That's the first thing I noticed. And the second thing is he also completes conveying the message that he started in the first place. And the people that he's conveying the message to are obviously people who haven't heard the complete message in the first place because he was persecuted. So they would not have been believers. Are obviously people who haven't heard directly message in the first with Abraham. They're both messengers. They both deliver a message to people who are not believers yet. And they both simply host them for a feast. So those are the common themes that I've noticed around this word Hajj, at least as it pertains to the messengers. So it doesn't. It's what seems to be basically completely opposite to this is that Hajj has anything to do with a particular place. It seems to be doing with where the messengers simply are in the Quran rather than a particular place. And B, this idea that Hajj is for Muslims, that is just completely opposite to these contexts where you find the word Hajj, because it is always pertaining messengers delivering a message to people who haven't heard the message yet. So they won't be Muslims at all. So it's very opposite to what is practiced today. And whatever one would like to translate this word as, it would have to fit this context. So that's my argument.
All right, so that's all you're gonna have for now.
Yeah, for now. Ahmed, you didn't send me the link, man. Send me the link.
All right. So I'll go ahead and make a few arguments, and then I'll continue with some of my arguments after Maverick further elaborates on his point, and after I interrogate him on a few points, because some of my arguments pertain to certain beliefs. Then I'll continue with some of my arguments. But أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من التكبر وأعوذ بالله من ضلال الدنيا. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan. I seek refuge in Allah from my own ego and arrogance, and from the ego and arrogance of others. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. I ask God to guide us through this discussion and guide us to the truth of this matter. Alright. So the discussion today is about Hajj, the meaning of Hajj, and whether it has to do with a specific rite or ritual, right? And that's basically the main topic of this agreement here. And whether it has to do with a specific, some of the main points I'll be discussing in regards to prove that it's a specific ritual is first of all, whether Hajj should be held in a specific place. I think this is a very important point to make in regards to whether it's a specific ritual, right? And not just a place where the messenger would have been, or a place where it could be held anywhere. And I think proving this would be very much sufficient to prove that it's a certain ritual that must be conducted. So a lot of my main arguments will be pertaining to proving the physicality of Hajj and the specific location of Hajj. Other arguments I'll be making is arguments from linguistic precedents that has to do with Semitic languages and the evolution of Semitic languages in regards to Hajj. And another more arguments I'll be providing is from traditional precedents that we have from Ahl-Kitab, the people of the scripture, and how they carried over the rite or the ritual of Hajj, right? So, and more arguments I'll be making is regards to proving inconsistencies within the views of the alternative, being Maverick's view, and pointing out enough inconsistencies to show that my hypothesis or my view is more consistent and a better explanation, has more explanatory power to what the Hajj is in the Quran. All right. So the first thing to tackle here is first thing I want to talk about here is basic argument from traditional precedents. So when it comes to debating the meaning of a word or debating a certain Abrahamic tradition, we have many sources available to use and for us to see how these certain rites or rituals or Abrahamic traditions evolved. Because as we can all agree here, right, Deen al-Islam, the religion of Islam, it didn't begin with Muhammad, didn't begin with Moses, right? It was established by the creed of Abraham, right? And all these rites should have been carried over by all the people of the scripture and Ahl Kitab. So this gives us all the more reason to go look at them and look at what they do and look at basically what they have in their scripture as more evidence to one hypothesis over another, right? So what I'll be looking at here is from the evidence from scripture, aka the Bible, more specifically the Psalms or the Zabur, right? And the reason I'm going to be quoting this is even so the point I'm going to make here is that even if you don't see the Psalms,
can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you?
Go ahead.
Don't you have to have authority from the Quran that you can use the Bible as an argument?
That's no problem. I'm going to explain why it's more logical to take this as a source of evidence. So what I want to explain why is that even if one may not see these sources as infallible, and even myself, I don't take these sources to be infallible, and I don't think anyone else in this VC does, right? But the point is that we have a precedence for one's explanation over another. And if one's explanation holds to more history and holds to more tradition and holds to more Abrahamic, the more consistency within the Abrahamic tradition, I think it gives more evidence and gives more weight to one hypothesis over another, right? Even if one might not take a source as infallible, right? So the sources I'm going to provide, it just adds more and more evidence and weight to the ritual I would call to be Hajj, or how I would say it is pilgrimage, right? So for that, let's look at Psalms 84. I'll be quoting it in VC1 chat. If you just give me a second. Oh, in closed debate, sorry. I'll be quoting it in closed debate. Hopefully it quotes right. There it is, okay. So I'll be reading out Psalms 84, God willing. So, how lovely is thy dwelling place, O Lord of hosts! My soul longs, ye faints for the court of the Lord. My heart and flesh sing for the joy to the living God. Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young at thy altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are those who dwell in thy house, ever singing thy praise. Blessed are the men whose strength is in thee, in whose hearts are on the highway to Zion. As they go through the valley of Bakkah, they make it a place of springs. The early rain also covers it with pools. Right. So as we can see here, we have a precedence, and we can make a few conclusions from this verse, right? That there's specific pilgrimage or specific journey made to the specific place called the Valley of Becca, as they travel through it, as specified by this verse. Another thing that we can easily conclude from this verse is that a specific house of God that's specified, which is the dwelling place of the Lord, or the house of the Lord, who's dwell in thy house, as specified in verse 4 and verse 1. Right. So and to make also note that the words in Hebrew that are used are bait for the house, which is the same Quranic word that refers to what I would claim to be the house of the Lord, which is Bait al-Haram. Right. So these are important points we can take, and this is high evidence and gives a lot of weight to those are precedents to what I would say is pilgrimage or hajj within the Bible, and it gives much more weight to my view and my hypothesis over another hypothesis that might not be supported by 3,000 years of tradition and 3,000 years of scripture, recorded scripture. Right. So that's just one point I'm making here. And we'll get back to the importance of this point in a later through the discussion. So the second important argument I would make is that proving that Masjid al-Haram is a real place in a certain location, and proving that the house of God, the Bayt al-Haram, is a physical place and in a physical location, and showing how Masjid al-Haram itself is connected to Hajj through multiple verses. So the first verse I want everyone to look at is, if you check closed debate, it will be Surah At-Tawbah, verse 28. Now, if we look at Surah At-Tawbah, verse 28, I'm sure everyone's aware of the context of Surah At-Tawbah. Has to do with the ultimatum of the disbelievers and the war that was going on at the time, and the treaties and such, and all this, right? So if you look at verse 28 of Surah At-Tawbah, it says, "Believers, those who ascribe partners to God are truly unclean. Do not let them come near the Masjid al-Haram after this year. If you are afraid you may become poor, God will enrich you out of his bounty. If you please, God is all-knowing and wise." Now we know from this verse that there's certain people, aka the mushrikeen, the najis mushrikeen, and they're told to not come near the Masjid al-Haram. So from this verse, I don't think it needs much more explanation to show that if a specific people aren't to come near a certain place, or a certain Masjid al-Haram, right, then we can conclude that it is a certain place just from this verse. But I'll be providing even more verses to support my point. So you have Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 191. Sorry, I misquoted there. There you go. All right, so here's Surah Al-Baqarah 191. Kill them wherever you encounter them and drive them out from where they drove you out, for persecution is more serious than killing. Do not fight them at the sacred or I'll keep it as Masjid al-Haram for the sake of discussion. Do not fight them at the Masjid al-Haram unless they fight you there. If they do fight you, kill them. This is what such disbelievers deserve. From this specific verse, we can conclude that there was a place, or there was no fighting that was decreed by God, no fighting to happen in Masjid al-Haram, at Masjid al-Haram. And I think it's just much more consistent with the two verses that I posted, to say that Masjid al-Haram is an actual place. Right? And another verse I will be quoting to further support this point even is Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 196. This comes to, I want to go back to this verse to prove more of the rituals and the rites of Hajj, but I want everyone to focus on the last two sentences of this verse, which says, this applies to those whose household is not near the sacred or the Masjid al-Haram. Always be mindful of God and be aware that he is stern in his retribution. So we see from this verse, if you read it even in context, that there's certain rites and rituals that are given to these certain people, and certain rituals that are given to people whose household is not near the Masjid al-Haram. فَلَا أَهْلَهُ لَيْسَ حَاضِرًا إِلَى مَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. They're not present at Masjid al-Haram. So it's another evidence that we can show that Masjid al-Haram is an actual place, and I think concluding otherwise would be ridiculous. So now to show that, where is it? Okay, yeah, we have Surah At-Tawbah. So to prove that Masjid al-Haram is connected to Hajj itself, is also, first of all, this verse. It mentions Hajj. I can even quote the Arabic if anyone wants to look at it. So وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَ لِلَّهِ. So we can easily conclude that the Hajj has to do with the Masjid al-Haram. He's giving specific rites and rituals, especially at the end of the verse when it gives specific conditions for people who are not near Masjid al-Haram. Another verse to quote is Surah At-Tawbah, verse 19, which once again shows that Masjid al-Haram is specifically allocated to Hajj and has to do with Hajj. So I'll read it and I'll show the Arabic as well. Give me a second. أجعلتم سقايا الحاج والعمرة وعمارة المسجد الحرام. So we can conclude that Hajj and Umrah are specifically to do with Masjid al-Haram, right? So if we take into conjunction the what we proved before, that Masjid al-Haram is a physical place, and we take into conjunction these two verses, which clearly prove that Masjid al-Haram has everything to do with Hajj, and Hajj has everything to do with Masjid al-Haram, this should be a very easy conclusion that Hajj is at a specific place called Masjid al-Haram from the conclusions that are made by the verses, right? And so that's one, that main argument as well, to prove that it's a specific location, a specific ritual. Now onto other, basically I want to make more arguments or more points to disprove other possible hypotheses that one may put forward or Maverick may put forward during this discussion, right? So if one may claim that Hajj is a form of a gathering where people may debate and invite to Islam and such, right? But if we look at Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 2, Surah Al-Baqarah 197, I'll quote it both in English and in Arabic. So we have the English, the Hajj are known months during the prescribed months. So whoever does the Hajj, there should be no indecent speech, no misbehavior, and no quarreling. And the specific word he uses mujadala, wala jidal, right? So this once again is a conclusive way to prove that Hajj, there should be no debating or arguing going on during Hajj. I think this is conclusive enough, but I will go further and dispute points that one may bring forward future in this discussion, whether it be from anyone or from Maverick. One may say that what this verse is trying to say is that it's not necessarily saying that Hajj, there can't be any debating during Hajj, but it's just only giving etiquette or certain conditions during the debating of Hajj, and to not argue in a bad manner, basically, and to debate in a more formatted way, as I've heard this claim being made before, right? So this is a completely false claim and a completely ridiculous claim, both linguistically and contextually. And the reasons here is because first reason here, I have multiple reasons. The first reason here is that this possible gathering for a debate and such, and it would make no sense for this verse to be giving prohibitions or conditions of this certain debate, because if you look into context, it gives prohibitions and conditions that have nothing to do with debating or a gathering for a debate. For example, forbidding indecency, sexual relations, indecent speech, etc., right, which have nothing to do with etiquette or conditions of debating. The second point I want to bring up as to why this claim of to prove more conclusively that jidal, arguing and debating, Hajj just can't be arguing and debating, and showing that jidal has nothing to do with bad-mannered arguing and is just prove that it is also in a normal manner of debating, is because we have other verses in the Quran that uses the word mujadala, right? For example, in Surah Hud, verse 32, we have, "O Noah, you have done mujadala with us." This is the people telling Noah that they have he has disputed them and argued with them and debated them, right? So this can conclusively prove that mujadala doesn't mean bad-mannered arguing or bad-mannered debating, but rather this word refers to debating and quarreling of all kinds, which easily disproves any hypothesis of one saying that Hajj has to do with any form of invitation to Islam or debating, invitation to Islam through debating. Another verse I want to quote is proving that mujadala has to, because this is going to be through a premise by premise deduction. If this verse clearly prohibits jidal during Hajj, and I can show that jidal has everything to do with inviting to Islam, then we can conclude that Hajj has nothing to do with inviting to Islam. So the verse I want to quote here is Surah Al-Nahl, verse 125. So I'll quote it here for everyone. This is Surah Al-Nahl, verse 125. So that's 16, 125. And I'll quote the Arabic as well to prove my point about the word mujadala and how it cannot be done during Hajj. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Right? So this verse unequivocally, so I'll read it in English as well. Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good teaching. Argue with them, jadil with them in the most courteous way, for your Lord knows best who has strayed from his way and who is rightly guided. So this verse unequivocally proves that jidal and mujadala has everything to do with inviting to Islam and people calling to Islam and debating about Islam, right? So if we can conclusively prove that jidal and mujadala is also a form of inviting to Islam and has everything to do with inviting to Islam, and we have another verse which is Surah Al-Baqarah 197 that says you cannot do mujadala during Hajj, and I think it's a logical conclusion to say that you cannot Hajj has nothing to do with inviting to Islam or debating about Islam for the sake of inviting people to Islam. And another verse I want to bring up as well. This goes back to my other argument about showing that specific place and all this is Surah Al-Baqarah verse 158. Here it is. Surah Al-Baqarah. I'll quote in Arabic as well. I want to quote everything in Arabic and English so everyone can check the words. So we have Surah Al-Baqarah here. إن الصفة والمروة من شعائر الله فمن حج البيت أو اعتمر فلا جناح عليه أن يطوف بهما ومن تطوع خيرا فإن الله شاكر عليم. So it says here Safa and Marwa are among the sha'air, the rites or the symbols of God, right? And whoever does Hajj of the Bayt, Hajj of the house of God, right? There's no problem upon him to yatuf bihima, to wander and walk upon them or walk between them, right? So this is also a very much conclusive way of showing that Hajj is in a specific place that must contain these two things called Safa and Marwa, and has to be able to circle or walk around it or walk within it, right? So that's another evidence to show that it's in a specific place. And I don't think there's any other hypothesis that has to do with a non-specific place that can explain well what Safa and Marwa is without appealing to the basic geography and basic history that Safa and Marwa are two hills that are placed there when you go to Hajj. So those are the basic arguments that I've just brought forward, but I have a few more points I'm going to bring up when the discussion further carries on, inshallah. But just to summarize, I brought an argument from traditional precedents, one of the Psalms 84 and the 3,000 year tradition of the Jews and what they have in their own scripture. I brought up arguments proving that Masjid al-Haram is in a real place in a certain location by quoting 928, 2191, 2196. And also I proved the alternative hypothesis wrong, any alternative hypothesis about inviting to Islam or debating to invite to Islam through many verses that I quoted that has to do with mujadala. So, alhamdulillah, that's all I have for now. But I have much more to talk about as we go further in this discussion. Thank you. I hope everyone benefited from that.
Right. Okay, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, sorry about that.
To start with Masjid al-Haram, I've never claimed that Masjid al-Haram is not a real place. So I was quite confused why you went on about that. Masjid al-Haram is definitely a real place. However, Hajj does not have to be performed in Masjid al-Haram. And the reason I say so is simply because Abraham, if I use the word performed, he performed Hajj, and Abraham was never associated with the term Masjid al-Haram throughout the Quran. And also, Masjid al-Haram is not limited or only associated with Prophet Muhammad. It's also associated with Prophet Musa if you read chapter 17, verse 1 and verse 2. The individual spoken of is Prophet Musa. So Masjid al-Haram is a place, but it's not one place. It's just a description that can be given to at least different places associated with different messengers, such as Moses and Muhammad, if I strictly stick to what is found in the Quran, which I tend to do. As for the Prophet Muhammad's Hajj, he performed it in Masjid al-Haram. And yes, and that is because that's where he came from. Masjid al-Haram is simply home to him. It's where he got persecuted from. It's where he started preaching the message. And it's where he got persecuted for preaching the message. So when he came back home to Masjid al-Haram, he's a messenger. Is there a lot to say that he completed conveying the message that he started? Would that be a stretch? I don't think that would be a stretch. I mean, you would expect that of him as a messenger. But even if I put that aside for a moment, these are the facts on the ground that we can't ignore. The facts are that he performs Hajj back home in Masjid al-Haram, where the people that reside there are mushrikeen for the time being. They are not believers yet. He has not conveyed the message to them. So these are the facts. They are non-believers, just like the people who came to Abraham when he was to observe Hajj. The people that came to him were non-believers. They haven't heard the message yet. So both of them are messengers. Both of them are attended by non-believers. The other thing both of them do is they both host them to a feast. They both slaughter an animal. Both messengers slaughter an animal. Read Surah Hajj 26 and onwards, and Al-Baqarah 196, in fact. So they both slaughter animals. That's another thing that they have in common. Now, since these people are non-believers, the people that are attending them, the people that they are hosting are non-believers, and the fact that they are messengers, are we going to argue about the fact that they conveyed the message to them? Or is that worth an argument? I think that's fair, right? I think it's fair to say that they didn't just host them for a meal and let them go on their merry ways and forget their role as a messenger. So it's fair to say that they conveyed the message to them. In fact, it's in the Quran. It literally says so. So I'm going by these obvious patterns that we can't ignore. What else? As for the term bait, so if we go to chapter 396, we'll go to chapter 396 and we're going to read the verse after, and then we'll have an understanding of what a bait actually is. So it says, indeed, the first bait set up for the people is that in Becca. Now listen to this. Mubarakan, blessed, wahudan, and a guidance, lil alameen, for the worlds, or for mankind, lil alameen. So it's blessed and guidance for the world. This bait is blessed guidance for the world. Keep that in mind. The next verse. Fihi ayatin bayinatin. In it are signs clear. In this bait are signs clear. Maqamu Ibrahimu, and the status of Abraham. And whoever enters it, whoever enters what? This bait, he will be safe. He is safe. So whoever enters this bait is safe. Now, before I continue, just a quick recap. It's blessed, guidance for mankind, in it are signs clear and the status of Abraham, and whoever enters it is safe. Now, what can bait mean? Can these descriptions be afforded to a building? Can a building be referred to as blessed guidance for the world? Can a building be a guidance for the world? And in this building, you will find in it are signs clear. Clear signs in this building, in the status of Abraham. And whoever enters it is safe. Can this really be a building, or can it be something else? And then it says, and due to God for the people, and upon God and do God upon the people, and do God upon the people is Hajj, the house. Hajj, the house. I'm not even going to translate it. Oh, sorry, Hajj, the bait. For whoever is able for him means. Whoever has means. For whoever has means, or whoever has a way. And then it says, just to give you a comparison, and whoever disbelieved. So this bait, Hajj to this bait, or disbelief. So can it be Hajj to a building, or disbelief, or something else? Then it says, and whoever disbelieved, then indeed God is free from the worlds. God needs nothing. So, what can bait mean? Considering all these ideas or descriptions of what a bait is, we can go to 481 and we will find that it says, ويقولون داعة فإذا برزوا من عندك بية دائفة. So it says, and they say, we pledge obedience, then when they leave from you, then harbors intentions a group of them other than that which you say. So bait is to basically intentions, basically change of plan. Bait. It's basically something that you've conceived of in the mind. So this bait, can it be either a building? Can a building be referred to as blessed guidance for the world, of which in it you will find signs clear in the status of Abraham, and whoever enters it will be safe? Or can that be referring to a plan? The plan of God, in other words. So the plan of God is blessed, it's guidance for the world. In it are signs clear, and the status of Abraham, and whoever enters it will be saved. The plan of God, that is the plan of God, or a building. Those are the two alternatives that you've got. So I'm arguing that according to these contexts, it's pretty clear that it cannot be referring to a building. I think he said Safa and Marwa. Now the interesting thing about Safa and Marwa, we'll go to chapter 2, 158. I think we've had a conversation about this before as well. Is that it says, indeed, Safa and Marwa are from the symbols of God. So whoever Hajj the bait or performs Umrah, so no blame on him that he goes around between both of them. And whoever volunteered better, then indeed God is appreciative, omniscient. So, two things in this verse. Safa and Marwa are referred to as the sha'air of God. And what I find interesting in that is that the Abraham and the animals that he slaughtered for his guests are also referred to as the sha'air of God. Number one. Number two, this verse says that whoever volunteered better, and whoever volunteered better. Now, since we're talking about doing good or volunteering to do better, then clearly this can have nothing to do with running around or running in between two mountains. I don't see how that has anything to do with khair. And the third thing about this verse is that the only Safa and Marwa, or the only in terms of doing good or etc., the only thing this can be associated with is the hadya, or the animals that the Prophet and the believers slaughter when they reach Masjid al-Haram. I mean, it's not a, or else you would have to say that it's just a coincidence that the Safa and Marwa is linked to Hajj. But the only thing that we see that they actually engage with in Hajj are those two things. A, they slaughter an animal and host the people there, and B, they spread the message. Those are the two things that we literally see them engage in. We don't see them engage in anything to do with mountains. And B, we see that the slaughtering of animals are referred to as sha'air of God. We see that with Abraham and the animals that he slaughtered when he observed the Hajj. So again, you would have to call that a coincidence. And C, like I said, what has running between mountains got to do with doing khair, which this verse is speaking about. So in a nutshell, yeah, if I go to 197, about, I think he mentioned the months, the known months where this Hajj is observed. Again, I stick to the Quran. Like, if I say anything that is not on the Quran, in the Quran, then hold me to it. But that's my whole spiel. So the known months that we find in the Quran are the 4 months of treaty between the Muslims and the Mushrikeen of that time. So within those 4 months is when the Muslims had a chance to simply enter the town, if you like, and basically host the people there for the dinner, for the feast, and continue spreading the message, which the messenger was prevented from in the first place. So that's sticking to the Quran. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is any. I don't think me and my friend here will argue about the fact that the messenger and the followers. I'm gonna wrap up. Yeah, I don't think there's much of an argument we can have about the fact that the messenger basically observed the Hajj in Masjid al-Haram with people who weren't Muslims at the time. I don't think we can argue that. I don't think we can argue the fact that he basically gave them a feast because it's there in black and white. I don't see how we could argue that the messenger did not convey the message to them. I don't see why anyone would want to argue that. What else? And I don't see the difference between what Prophet Muhammad and how he observed Hajj and how Abraham observed Hajj. And they both seem to have done the same thing, which is, again, like I said, hosted people for a feast and spread the message. So sticking to the Quran, those are the things that we can find. I noticed that you brought up the term, the jidal, a lot. And again, this is why I steer away from arguing about what a particular word means, because what happens is people just go back and forward about going, oh no, the word means this, no, the word means that, no, the word means this. This is much easier when I have the entire context. Then basically the word has to fit the context and not the other way around. So what else? So yeah, another thing I noticed you did was quite sneaky there. When a word means something in a particular context, it does not mean that the word has to mean that in every single context. Words are determined by context, and this is precisely why I make my argument from the angle of the context rather than the word, because arguing from the angle of the context is much more superior because the word has to fit the context and not the other way around, like I said. I think I covered about all. Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you so much. So basically, I took note of a few things you said during that, and I took note of a few things that you didn't actually address, and I'm going to go through these things. And I'm actually going to further my points, and I'll try and pin you on certain points that I believe that you are required to explain to the audience and required to explain to me, your interlocutor, for this discussion to, to further on, for it to be more fruitful, right? Otherwise, would be a much less genuine understanding of what Hajj really is. So, the first point that I'm going to address is, he said Masjid al-Haram can be found in many places. Now, this still is not a good explanation as to why Surah At-Tawbah, verse 928, specifically says, the mushrikeen are unclean, do not let them come near the Masjid al-Haram after this specific time. Now, this point wasn't addressed, and I need this point to be addressed. And why is the certain people not allowed to come to this Masjid al-Haram, right? The second point is I wanted to make, excuse me, is where is it? Yeah, he didn't address the
Let's go
point
one
of
Yeah, let's go 1-for-1. It's easier. Sorry?
you want to go one for one?
Yeah, as in
All
like
right, that's fine.
point for point. Yeah, it's
All
easier
right,
because we forget otherwise.
all right, no problem. No problem.
Like I said, Masjid al-Haram is associated at least with Prophet Musa and Prophet Muhammad. I don't have a problem with Masjid al-Haram being referred to as a place. I'm just saying that it's not like the name of a place, rather more of a description. You know what I'm saying? So yes, where the Prophet was from at the time is referred to as Masjid al-Haram. I don't
No
remember you
problem.
asking.
So what is yeah? So I was gonna
What was
ask,
that
what
background?
is Masjid al-Haram? What does
What is that
Masjid
background?
al-Haram mean?
Okay, that background, is that you though? Something keeps coming on.
Me? No. That's not me. That's not me. I thought it was you. Can
Okay.
anyone please, if anyone's making that sound, please mute your mic. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So what is Masjid al-Haram? Could you explain to us, please? So
Masjid.
actually, before you continue, I wanted to make a point, and certain things I want you to explain to the audience. I want you to explain to me, so our points can be further continued. Whether you don't want to give a single English synonymous word to translate is mostly relevant, but I still need to explain what something is and the concept of something, whether you want to translate it or not. Now, I don't think the point of what Safa and Marwa are themselves wasn't clearly explained linguistically, and what they mean and what the difference between them is. A word that you didn't address is tawaf, what tawaf means linguistically and contextually. Masjid al-Haram, you didn't explain what it is. You just kind of gave descriptions through context, but you didn't explain what Masjid al-Haram is. You never addressed the point of what Umrah is, and you never addressed what Hajj is, like in terms of its actual meaning. Like, what does it actually mean? What's the verb of Hajj? When someone does Hajj, what does it mean? Right. So these are these terms I need you to define to the audience to further explain your point. Otherwise, this discussion will be mostly useless if we're talking about verses and we're not explaining what they are, right? So these terms need to be defined. You could probably start with Masjid al-Haram, then go on to Safa and Marwa, the meaning of them linguistically, contextually, and the difference between them, please. Go ahead.
Sorry, buddy, I got a phone call, man. I'm really sorry, man. Can you repeat that?
All right, no problem. So basically, what I want the audience, so I need you to explain to the audience and to me for this discussion to be more fruitful and for us to be able to explain the concept of Hajj better, is to explain these certain terms that are directly associated with Hajj within the Quran in specific verses and through intercontextualizing other verses. A list of these certain terms, and there's more that I'll list further on later in discussion, is Masjid al-Haram, Tawaf, Safa and Marwa, Umrah, and actually Hajj itself, which, and I'll explain each one. So Masjid al-Haram, you didn't clearly address what it means. You kind of just explained the context behind it and gave different pointers and different descriptions, but you didn't explain what it is.
You didn't ask me.
What it is.
You didn't
Yeah,
ask
that's
me.
fine. So let me just finish up this point. And
I know. Not like I ducked something. Like, change your language a little bit, please.
yeah, no worries. I got you. So I need you to explain to the audience what like Masjid al-Haram means and like the linguistics of it. What tawaf means and the linguistics of it, the context of it. Like what the word means to the audience needs to be explained. What Safa and Marwa means, like what the words actually mean, and the specific difference between them as they're clearly differentiated in the verse that we quoted, Surah Al-Baqarah 158. Same goes for Umrah and even Hajj. The word Hajj hasn't been clearly explained. The verb, what it is and what's supposed to be done. Basically, like what is Hajj? Like the verb of Hajj, what is doing Hajj? So I think those terms need to be explained to the audience. I'll put them in chat, which terms I want explained. Oh, there you go. Osama did.
I'm not really sure where to take from there. Like I thought we were having a conversation. Now you're making it look like I need to explain this, I need to explain that, I need to explain this.
Well, the thing is, because if one's view is not fully explained, then there's like a discussion can't be further.
No.
For example, you explain a point about Safa and Marwa, but you didn't explain what they mean and what's the difference between them, right? So maybe you could start with there.
No, but see, I explained what needed to be explained. Like, so for example, when you say Safa and Marwa, I told you that they are referred to as the sha'air of Allah, right? So what is referred to as the sha'air of Allah, as I gave you as an example, are linked with Abraham, for example, and when he observed Hajj, and the animals that he slaughtered, they were referred to as sha'air of Allah. So number one. Number two, I said that this is something to do with, obviously it's something to do with Hajj, because the verse makes that clear. And B, it says what else is, yeah, it says something about whoever volunteered better, khair. So this Safa and Marwa has something to do with khair. So again, I understand how the slaughtered animals, that Abraham slaughtered, for instance, are khair, obviously, because they bring good to people. And C, when these very same people with the Prophet go to Masjid al-Haram and they are to observe Hajj, what do? They slaughter an animal. So link all of it together, and Safa and Marwa must have something to do with animals that are being slaughtered. That's it. I can't. Now, do you need the specific detail of the animals and stuff? I don't think that's necessary.
That's not what I'm asking for. So what I'm asking for now is what is the difference between Safa and Marwa? What's the difference between them two?
It's something to do with animals, possibly conditions of the animals, but I don't know. But what I do know is the important part, which is that it's something to do with animals. Did you know that much?
Right. So the point I wanted to make is that, or point I'm going to make is that, your proof that Safa and Marwa has to do with animals, or one of the evidences you gave, is that that's referred to as sha'air, and so is what Ibrahim did with the hadi and with the sacrifice, right? So the point I wanted to make here very clearly is that just because two things are referred to as sha'air Allah doesn't mean those two are associated as the exact same action or exact same thing, I would even say. For example, I would give you the linguistic example. I would say Bakka is Mubarakah and Laylatul Qadr is Mubarakah, or Shahr Ramadan is Mubarakah. But doesn't mean those two are associated or the same thing, right? So
No,
the point of both of them referred to as sha'ir doesn't prove that they are the same thing.
It's not as simple as that. You're ignoring. First of all, I never look at one thing. It's a
No problem.
It's preponderance of evidence that I look at. So it's not simple as sha'air for sha'air. No, it's sha'air and hajj, sha'air and hajj. Do you see the point? It's very specific.
No
in chapter 2, 158, Safa and Marwa is sha'air associated with hajj. Am I correct or not?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Abraham, and when he slaughtered the animals, those were sha'air associated with hajj. So it's more than the simple fact that it's sha'air associated with hajj. And then you have the fact that it's associated with the term khair, And then you have the fact that they do slaughter animals when they reach Masjid al-Haram. So it's that preponderance of evidence rather than a singular thing.
Mm. So the point I wanted to make to the audience here clear is that from the alternative position of Mavericky is that there is no clear explanation as to the meaning of itself of Safa and Marwa and specifically the difference between them. And because of this, we can't actually apply the verse or put the verse to practical use as God commands us to do so, right? Or God gives us information on as such. And I think that's a falling, basically a falling domino effect.
The verse wasn't addressed to us anyway.
Right, so you don't think Hajj is for us?
No, Hajj was for the messengers specifically. Hajj was what the messengers did with the people that they invited. That's the only evidence you can get from the Quran, because Hajj is connected with Abraham, and Hajj is connected with Prophet Muhammad, and when he goes back home. How else?
Right, no problem. So how did the prophet and his people apply Safa and Marwa and the difference between them? I think it was be like a bit inconsistent for us to not be able to explain a Quran verse that has to do with Hajj, right? When one position,
I'm
this
sure.
one, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm sure
This,
I'm sure the Arabic speaking individuals can have a have a go at what specifically what Safa and Marwa means, but the fact that we have narrowed it down to the fact that it's something to do with animals being slaughtered, I think that's being sufficient. That's more than sufficient, and I think you're just picking at straws right now, to be honest.
right, that's fine. If you can think that's fine, but I wanted to make the point to the audience clear is that an application of this verse can never be done, or nor can an understanding of how the application was used before if we can never differentiate between what Safa and Marwa is and what the words themselves mean. That's like the final point I wanted to make about Safa and Marwa and make clear to the audience that Safa and Marwa hasn't been clearly defined and the difference between them hasn't been made and its application hasn't been shown, and neither in present time or how it was applied before. So I think we can move on from Safa and Marwa now if you want.
But it doesn't concern us, so I don't think that's going to be much of an argument. The people that it concerned, which were the Prophet and the followers of that time, I'm sure they would have understood what Safa and Marwa is. So I don't think it's much of an argument, then, is it?
That's fine. So you can. I just want to make that point clear to the audience. So you want to go on to now. What do you think Umrah is? You need to explain that to the audience as clearly associated with Hajj.
Yeah, I mean, Umrah is simply the promotion. Umrah is simply promoting something, making something large. So what the Prophet is promoting is obviously the Deen. So, and again, if you want me to, you said earlier on that I need to translate what these words mean. I don't have a problem translating what these words mean. The issue is what happens is the moment I do so, then the conversation just becomes about no, the word cannot mean this and blah blah blah. Whereas the entire strength of my argument is the context, and that's what I want people to pay attention to. So as long as you can,
Right. So
as long as you can pay attention to the context, I don't have a problem translating the word. But just don't reduce the
right.
conversation to no, the word means this and no, it means that. Then that just becomes, not fruitful.
Right. No problem. So, can you explain to the audience or show them a deductive premise by premise, or at least give them a good evidence as to why the Arabic word Umrah means promotion of whatever it may be?
Okay, see, that's precisely what I was worried about. You went straight there, straight to the word. Look, the entire strength of my argument is the context. That's the entire strength of my argument. So
that's fine. That's fine. So explain what Umrah is through the context. What is Umrah? What is Umrah?
So what I'll explain is this, and I'll be surprised if anyone can. I don't know which premise anyone would reject. The messenger got persecuted from his home simply for spreading the message. That's premise one. Premise two. After a few, battles, whatever, eventually he came back home. When he came back home, the people that resided there are still the very same people that persecuted him. And obviously, among them are innocent people. So, premise 3, the messenger completed what he started in the first place. Which premise will anyone disagree with?
Right. So I don't think anyone disagrees with any of the premises, but the problem here is how do these premises follow and are a sequitur to the conclusion that Umrah means promotion, or Umrah is a promotion of the Hajj, or Umrah is a promotion of the Deen.
Okay.
Because I think me and the audience are trying to figure out what do you mean by Umrah, and what is the applicability and practicality of Umrah within the Quran, as it's mentioned directly with Hajj multiple times.
Okay. So, for instance, if we look at chapter 2, 196, it says, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. Yeah?
Mhm.
And then it says, فَإِنْ أُحْسِرْتُمْ. So, وَأَتِمُّ, how would you like to translate what?
So complete or go forth and do this, or complete. I'd say complete is a good one.
Okay, cool. To be told to complete something, you must have started it in the first place. You cannot
Of
complete
course.
something. Okay, thank you very much. Now, again, the messenger is simply completing what he started in the first place, which was to basically convey the message to the people. So, wal hajja wal umrata lillahi is simply complete the discourse and the promotion for the sake of God. So the word hajj is simply having a discourse, and wal umrah is the promotion lillahi, for the sake of God. And then it says, for in uhsirtum, and if you are prevented, what would the messenger be prevented from? The only people that would prevent the messenger are the mushrikeen, and they would only prevent him.
Correct.
Yeah, and they would only prevent him from doing one thing, which is what he started in the first place, which was to
The
convey the message.
Hajj.
Huh? No,
I was gonna say the Hajj.
what we know from the Quran. Well, you can say the Hajj, the discourse. You started to have a discourse with him in the first place about the Deen. That's what they persecuted for. That's what they persecuted him for, and that's what he came back to complete. Him being the messenger, so it shouldn't even be much of a surprise that he would do so. So there you go. So he simply came back to complete the discourse and the promotion for the sake of God. And then it says, and if you are prevented, then offer whatever can be obtained of ease of the sacrificial animals. Are we so if he's prevented, he at least, gives them gifts, basically.
Yeah. So
any disagreement
one
there?
thing I wanted. Before I get to that, one thing I wanted to mention is I'll repeat for everyone is that any questions that wanted to be like asked during Q&A and such, and want to be discussed later, put them in VC1 chat and pink moderator or admin, and inshallah we'll get to those questions. Okay, so to delve deeper into, inshallah, let's get back to the topic. So to delve deeper into to kind of the meaning or contextualization you gave of Hajj in this form of inviting to Islam, or bringing people to Islam, or having a discourse about Islam and such, right? So this goes back to one of my original points about mujadala, and even from my point, I do not even need to translate any word to even show this either, because I'm going to go back to my original argument that Hajj has to do with, if from your point of view, that Hajj has to do with inviting to Islam and having discourse with people, right, for them to come together with the Deen and such, right? So we specifically see in the Quran that it's told to not do mujadala during Hajj. Specific prohibition during Hajj to not do mujadala. I want to make this clear to the audience. To not do mujadala during Hajj. Now, linguistically, what that would mean, if you appeal to like dictionaries or lexicons, mujadala has to do with discourse, arguing, quarreling. Those are some main definitions we can get there, right? But translating the word is irrelevant to my point here, because the next verse I'm going to quote, which I quoted before, refutes this understanding that Hajj has to do with inviting to Islam and having a discourse about Islam. Because once again, I'm going to quote Surah An-Nahl, verse 125, which says, let me just put it back and close debate once again. So that's 16. Yeah, here you go. Sam quoted for me. Thank you very much. Prophet, call people to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good teaching. Jadil with them in the most courteous way, for your Lord knows best who has strayed from his way and who is rightly guided. Now, I don't think anyone with a right mind in this voice chat would disagree with the fact that mujadala about the deen has direct link and is literally the definition of inviting to people to Islam as per 16:125. And it has to do with inviting people to Islam on the way of the Lord with wisdom and good teaching, right? And arguing with people in the most courteous way. That is what mujadala is from the clear context of the verse. Now, if we connect this back,
context though, like that's earlier on I said to you that if, like, obviously a word is determined by context. So, for instance, when you bring chapter 2, 197, and you bring up the word jadil, look at the context that it's in. It's amongst a list of. Look at the list that it's in. One of them was sexual misconduct, unless I'm mistaken, and the other one was what?
Sexual misconduct, misbehavior,
All right, cool. Look at
basically
that list.
wickedness,
All
etc.
right, look. Cool. So sexual misconduct or wickedness. Let's just put it that way. Sexual misconduct
Yeah,
or
no problem.
wickedness. In that context, it can't be a conversation, can it? In that context, it's simple. It's context, brother. In the context of talking about sexual misconduct and wickedness, you cannot say that the third is a conversation because it doesn't
Exactly.
fit
So
in
I would
that.
agree. I would actually exactly agree. That's why I would say Hajj has nothing to do with having a discourse or a conversation with people
No.
and inviting to
I'm not
Islam.
talking about the word hajj here, though. I'm talking about the word mujadala. In that context,
Well,
it
Hajj,
cannot be a conversation.
mujadala is a prohibition. Mujadala is a prohibition of Hajj.
No,
Right,
I'm talking about in 197, in whichever form the word jadala is in, it's one of the things you are not to do. And in that context, it's a negative thing because it's clear in the context. I don't see what's the difficult part there. However, the very same word in a different context can have a positive light. I mean, all you did there was prove that a context determines the definition of a word, which is literally my argument,
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah. Okay. So we have to establish here your understanding of what mujadala is during Hajj and what's prohibited during Hajj.
No, see.
So what is prohibited during Hajj according to 2197 according to you?
Okay, we don't need to establish that. Let me tell you why we don't need to establish that. Because you're ignoring the entire system of my argument. I don't focus on particular words. I focus on context and I focus on certain things that are necessary, such as, number one, we're not going to argue about the fact that the messenger slaughtered animals. I don't see you taking up that argument. So the only argument left seems to be that the messenger conveyed the message to these people, which I don't see why you would argue that. I mean, he's a messenger. He came back home. Would he not convey the message to these people? I don't see.
No, I agree with that 100%, but I don't see how that is what Hajj is defined as, right? So I don't think that has been proven.
All right, we'll discuss that part. So you agree. So okay, so let's put aside the argument of what the word Hajj means. At least you agree with that, the fact that the messenger, after hosting them for a meal, would definitely invite these people to the message. You agree? So by
No, I don't think that's what I never agreed that the inviting to Islam is in the same. Well, one second. I obviously agree that the messenger conveyed the message of Islam, but I don't believe that this so-called invitation to Islam and discourse about
forget the word
Islam and
invitation. When he came back home, the messenger, remember the term, messenger. Did the messenger do his job and convey the message to the people he came to?
yeah, I don't have no disagreement.
But that's all I'm saying, though. What's the issue?
No, so you're saying that is what you're saying is that is
No.
Hajj.
put aside the argument of what the word Hajj means. Just put that aside for a moment. You don't seem to argue with me that obviously he hosted them for a meal, and B, he conveyed the message. Him being the messenger.
Hosted who for a meal?
Or who else? The people he went to.
No. What can you show, like, where did he host this meal and who?
Oh,
No problem.
okay,
But let me ask my question first. Once again. So where did he host this meal? And who did he host? One second. And who did he host this meal to specifically?
Okay,
right.
Let me read it. فإن أحصرتم فما استيسر من الهدي. So who's that for?
Can you quote the verse, please, first, before we can discuss it?
196. Chapter 2, 196.
The one with the no problem.
Yeah. فإن أحصرتم فما استيسر من الهدي. Who's that for?
Where is it? So if in it's in the beginning of the. I just want to quote the whole sentence to make sure. Okay, there it is. Yeah, sorry. So فإن حصرتم فما استيسر من الهدي ولا تخلفوا. That's another part, right? Yeah. So I have no disagreement. I have no disagreement. I have no disagreement that there was a sacrifice made or a slaughter made, right? So there's no disagreement there. But I'm asking, can you show that there's a specific audience here that this is to, and then that this audience is the non-Muslims, right? Because that was your claim before.
Okay, because
like
this
that this feast is for.
All right, this is done in Masjid al-Haram. Who lives in Masjid al-Haram? Who lives in Masjid al-Haram?
The believers. I'll answer that question. So at different points of time, different people lived in it. So at the beginning of the ministry of the Prophet, it would have been the believers and the mushrikeen. But by the end of his ministry, he was commanded to not let them near Masjid al-Haram, as per 9:28. In al-mushrikeen najisun fala yaqrabu al-Masjid al-Haram. So indeed, the polytheists are impure or filthy, and to not let them near Masjid al-Haram.
Brother, rather than being argumentative, we would get to places if we had a conversation instead. Because I think you're going a bit ahead of yourself. I know about when the mushrikeen were basically evicted from Masjid al-Haram, but in this particular time, in this particular verse 196, for crying out loud, my brother, you just read it yourself. فَإِنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ, who's the one preventing them? Who is that? Is it not the mushrikeen? Who is it? Who's preventing them?
Mushrikeen, yeah.
So they're dead, then, aren't they?
Yeah, but I'm saying, who is the sacrifice for?
Okay, if they are the people residing in Masjid al-Haram, and the messenger specifically did not bring these animals until he came back home, who's it for? And by the way, it's not just him. So did Abraham. Abraham invited non-Muslims. He called mankind. So why would he?
Yeah, I agree. He called all of mankind, right, including Muslims and non-Muslims, to do the Hajj.
So who's this for then? In fact, don't make me continue reading the verse, because it becomes even clearer. حتى يبلغ الهدي. Who's that? Until it reaches. Until it reaches. Yeah, هدي محله.
Hadi reaches its balagh, yeah.
Yeah, until it بلاغ محله, its destination.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So who's it for?
I wouldn't say it was for a specific person. That's why I wouldn't say it's to feed us, but like to feed one specific.
Is it for the residents of Masjid al-Haram or not?
Yeah.
Okay, so the residents of Masjid al-Haram in this particular time are mushrikeen.
No, both believers and mushrikeen.
Okay, fine. I'll let you have that. Goodness me. Cool, no problem. All right.
I never disagreed that at one point in time the mushrikeen were in control of Masjid al-Haram, especially after the Hijrah.
I don't care about one point in time. I'm talking about this particular time. Please don't try to divert me. This particular time, when the messengers performing Hajj, the people residing in Masjid al-Haram, along with Muslims, are mushrikeen. Yeah? So, all right. So
is Masjid al-Haram a specific place? Like, is this one place, Masjid al-Haram, or?
I told you it's a description.
Because you mentioned before that it's a multitude of places, right? So can you elaborate further on that? and what the description is. What does the description mean?
I can't go from one argument to another, man. Like you're sending me from one place to another. Like, wait, let me.
Oh no, it's fine. It's not one. It's not a different argument. I'm just asking you to explain the terms within your explanation because you're explaining about Masjid al-Haram, right? So I need these terms defined, or at least explained.
Masjid al-Haram, word for word, simply means the sanctioned place of submission. So masjid means place of submission. Haram means sanction. So the sanctioned place of submission. So the sanctioned place of submission, as it pertains to Prophet Muhammad, was, let's say, Mecca. The sanctioned place of submission, as it pertained to Moses, was the place he was persecuted from. Simple as that.
All right. So why do you say all these places are different then?
Because it's a description. It's not a name. So the description befitted the circumstance of Moses, and the description befits the circumstance of Prophet Muhammad. But you're taking me from one argument to one. Like, I need to address this one first. Like, 1 minute.
Okay, go ahead, but we'll keep all these points. Yeah.
Okay. So the messenger, when he came back to Masjid al-Haram, as well as in hosting people for a feast, I don't see how we can argue that he also, well, we agreed that he definitely conveyed the message. I mean, he's the messenger. That's what you would expect. When in fact,
No disagreement.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, it's befitting to say complete, because he started that literally in this particular place where he was persecuted from. So to use the word complete is befitting. So really and truly, the only argument that can be made against me is to say, yes, the messenger hosted people for a feast. Yes, he conveyed the message, but he also did this thing. But then this thing that you are talking about just becomes moot. Like it becomes, it won't fit the rest. Like, it's one thing to basically host people for dinner and to convey the message, but what the hell is a pilgrimage? And to be talking about a pilgrimage, you have to set the whole story up in the Quran. You have to set up a place, and you have to set up why that place is important, and then you have to set up
I think that's all. I think that's all clearly explained in Surah Al-Baqarah. Maqama Ibrahim fi Bakka al-Mubaraka. What is Bakka al-Mubaraka to you? Bakka al-Mubaraka.
Well,
as we know from precedents from previous scriptures and historical and geographical information from secular sources, we know that Bakka is a specific place to be found.
Like,
so what is Bakka al-Mubaraka to you?
I don't have a problem with the term Bakka. Like I said, I avoid the word arguments and basically look around what I find around the words.
No, that's fine, but I understand.
Let me land. Don't do that. Let me land. What I find around the words is Mubarakan, for instance, blessed, Hudan lil Alameen, guidance for mankind. So and then in the next verse it says, in it are signs clear. Now, just simply taking those words, blessed, guidance for mankind, and in it are signs clear, cannot be associated with a building. Simple as that. A building doesn't guide.
First of all, the blessed description is given to Becca, not the house itself. Right, so you have to keep that in mind. But the point here is that you're making it very, very hard for your audience to understand these terms that you're giving in your explanations.
Wait,
when you've given no Well, I'm just saying from my experience, right? So my experience, I would assume my experience is similar to the audience's experience, that you're making it very hard for the audience to understand these terms that you're using. For example, this term of Bakka, you haven't explained what this term Bakka is, or the term these repeated terms that I've told you about, like Safa and Marwa. You haven't explained what the specific words are. I'm not asking to have a full blown out discussion about linguistics. I'm saying to give basic definitions so your arguments can follow through in the first place, right? Like if I'm asking you to prove to me this Hajj means this, and you just making me tick
I
boxes.
don't.
Yeah, the Prophet conveyed the message. The Prophet did slaughtering, right? But I need you to show me what this has to do specifically with Hajj, and what does Hajj mean? What does Bakka mean specifically for your points to follow through? Otherwise, my position would, and my hypothesis would have much more weight, right?
I mean, first of all, I would appreciate it if you let the audience do the judging, and it would do you well if you humbled yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, Mav.
The word, huh?
I say I agree with Maverick. Let's not appeal to the jury's emotions.
All right, no problem. But so can any like moderator try and divert this discussion to a specific point where can we
Well,
at least get more explanations
answer
on
you.
specific terms?
Let me respond to the points that you mentioned. First of all, Becca, you only brought up Becca now, so I don't know. You're making it sound like I
No, I brought up.
have avoided
I brought up.
Becca somehow.
No. I've actually brought up back as my first argument in my opening statement, which was when I quoted Psalms 84 and I quoted the house of God and I quoted the dwelling of the Lord.
Oh, but okay. But with respect, I think you recall me saying that to use the Bible, you have to get authority from the Quran. So I mean, I don't really,
No. See.
I don't really pay attention to what the Bible says.
So it's okay. So you first of all you ignored I can actually go into that argument if you want and prove that the Psalms is authorized by the Quran. But my point in the first place is that you don't have to take this source as an infallible source, and neither do I, to show that there's a certain precedence and a certain tradition within previous scripture and within tradition of Ahl Kitab that there's a certain place called Valley of Bakka, Wadi Bakka, or Batan Bakka,
I mean,
and there's the house of God within it, and
but
it's
not,
telling us to do pilgrimage within it, right? So
but for
it's
me,
more of evidence. It's more
like,
of evidence to weigh my position.
can I respond? Like for me, it's not a criteria of any kind. So I mean, I don't know why you're forcing the issue.
All right, so sorry.
It's
All right,
like,
so do
I
you want to
can
go
read
into that
any
discussion?
old book and say you should listen to what this book says. I don't see why you should. So
But this is a book. This is a book that the Quran confirms, though.
no, but the Quran has never told me to refer to it. I mean, unless you can give me a verse.
It does actually. There's a specific verse that tells you to refer specifically to the Psalms in the Quran. And I'll give you that verse.
You give me that verse. Well, I think is the verse talking about a specific thing?
Yeah, why?
Well, then that answers the question, then, isn't it? It's talking about a specific thing.
Why?
Why?
No, but it refers to the book itself, and so tells you to refer to it.
No, about a specific thing. Like, see, when you ignore the fact that it's talking about a specific thing, you're manipulating the verse. The verse is talking about a specific thing, unless I'm incorrect.
So, do you reject that the Psalms is the Zabur?
I have the Quran, my friend. What else do I need?
That wasn't the question asked. Do you reject that the Psalms is the Zabur?
I don't, bro. The only conversation I have about Deen is about the Quran. If you're all right with that, I don't talk about.
Right.
I don't talk about the Bible. What does this word mean? And that's none of my business.
Okay, but you still have to answer the question, bro. You cannot say you dodging the question.
Zadar, if you want to make a point, yeah, you have to like put it in Q&A and tag an admin or a moderator. Inshallah, we'll get to it. Don't worry. We'll hash everything out. Don't worry.
Hold on.
So,
it's not like Suspected is not allowed to reference something from the Bible, but he cannot use it to prove any point or as a source of authority. But just do it.
Exactly. So that's not what So that's exactly what I did. Right. I specifically said I don't take this as a source of infallibility, nor as a source of 100% authority. But I'm saying it's a high, a very strong piece of evidence to have 3,000 years of precedence to one certain explanation of Hajj versus another explanation of Hajj. And given that there's specific terms given in this psalm, including Bakka, the house of the Lord, the courts of the Lord, the dwellings of the Lord, and pilgrimage through the valley of Bakka, which the Quran says is Maqam Ibrahim, is in the Bakka al-Mubarakah, and the verse of Hajj is mentioned right after Bakka is explained, right? in the Quran. So I think this is a strong evidence, and I think the audience should ponder upon this and take this into high account. And for the point is, the point I was trying to make is that the Quran specifically refers to the Zabur and quotes it, and it's clearly shown as a source of information that can be taken from, and that's why I did use it as a source of information. So that's what.
I mean,
that's my point.
you're like I said, you're entitled to do as you please, but as far as I'm concerned, the Bible is not a criteria of any kind for me. So I don't even know what to respond to when you use the Bible. I can see. I don't know if you noticed my my line of argument. I like to use verses and discuss the Quran. So if we could perhaps go back to that, I'd appreciate it. Like what I would say about what 1 second. What I would say about which seems to be the only things that you're holding against me right now. The term what Baka means, what Safa and Marwa means. Yeah, what Safa and Marwa means, and for that,
Umrah and Hajj.
I've already explained what Umrah and Hajj mean. Hajj is Umrah is promote, and Hajj is to have a discourse. But again, rather than argue with me about what the words mean, which I find quite cheap, I suggest you argue with the context I presented, which is the crux of my.
All right, no problem. So,
please let me finish. So what I will say
ahead,
about what I will say about Safa and Marwa and the term Baka is I will simply say that Safa and Marwa, I've explained to you that it's something to do with the animals, possibly the conditions of the animals. I really don't need to explain further than that. Like it's not a necessity. You just being, I don't know, it's up to you, but it's not a necessity. I think I've explained the important bit, which is it's to do with animals being slaughtered. As for Baka, again, not a necessity at all. Fact of the matter remains, what seems to be in discussion in 96 and 97 is that there is this thing which is blessed guidance for the mankind. In it are signs clear, and whoever enters it is safe. And all of those descriptions can only be afforded to the deen, the plan, which is the deen. So I don't see any importance being placed to. Well, I don't think you can get. It's literally not possible, as far as I'm concerned, to get the rituals you're seeking from using the Quran alone.
All right, no problem. So for one, so before I move on to a question about one other word, I'm gonna make a point clear to the audience that my friend Maverick, he hasn't been able to, from his point of view and from his worldview of what Hajj is, he hasn't been able to explain the definition or the meaning of the word Safa individually, or the meaning of the word Marwa individually, neither the meaning Bakka individually. And I needed to make that point to the audience and make it clear that
they heard though.
I would argue that's fine. That's fine.
Are you being weird?
I'm just I'm just emphasizing points to make my argument stronger. So I would argue that a worldview or a hypothesis that has more explanatory power over the meaning and definitions and contextualization of verses is the stronger hypothesis and stronger worldview to be taken into account here. Right. So the next word I wanted to move on to is tawaf. What do you understand by tawaf in the verse, or how do you contextualize tawaf? If that's how you want me to word the question.
I don't know. Are we having a conversation? Or am I being interrogated? Like, what is going on here? This is just strange. Can we get a moderator?
Yeah, well, it's just. Yeah, well, I'm just asking you about. Well, I can't assess your worldviews if you're not defining words for me.
I need you to like
We're gonna go back to the Quran verse as well.
I need you to compare my argument to your argument. Like, to just place yourself in some position where you can just dismiss things is easy. What makes my argument wrong and your argument right? For instance, you're going on about Safa and Marwa. Okay, cool. Looking at chapter 2, 158. What makes Safa and Marwa anything to do with mountains? Without you appealing to some sort of authority and saying, oh, in Arabic, blah, blah, blah. Without appealing to authority, show me. Like, what makes Safa and Marwa mean?
Wait. Okay, 2 points here. First of all, I never made the claim that Safa and Marwa are mountains within this discussion. Second of all, may I inquire, how was explaining the linguistics or appealing to the Arabic language, appealing to authority.
Because look, whatever you claim, you need to be able to prove that. You see, when someone says a word means this, all I need for you to do is put that word in a sentence. The moment I read that sentence or I read the context surrounding that word, if the word doesn't fit the context, I don't care what you tell me. It's impossible for the word to mean what you say it means. Because that's simply how communication works, full stop. So if you, whatever you, I can allow you to say Safa and Marwa means this or that. But the moment I read the verse and I understand the context, it has to fit it. And that's where I'm saying you won't be able to do. And this is where you argue, this is where you appeal to authority. And I'm saying that's just an insult to intellect, because in no language can a context be heading a certain direction and then you could just insert a word that has nothing to do with the context. In no language is that possible. That's not how communication works. Imagine I'm talking to you about something and then I just throw in ice hockey. What the hell has this conversation got to do with ice hockey? It's not possible.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and that's why I don't make the claim that the words I insert here have nothing to do with the context. I fully make the claim, and I abide by it, that the words that I'm referring to here perfectly fit the context of the way I explain what Hajj is. The difference between my worldview and your worldview is my worldview is supported by more linguistic evidence, through linguistic precedents and through authority of language. And I need to make clear to the audience the point of that.
So
Somehow appealing
what does Safa and Marwa mean again?
Sorry?
So what does Safa and Marwa mean? So we can look at chapter 2, 158 and see if what you're telling us is possible considering this verse.
So only from the Quran you want me to define a word, because that's not my methodology. See, that's why I'm going to get to the point that our methodologies differ here. Well, I use the Arabic language to define words, but you only use the Quran as a dictionary, right?
No, but that's fine. It still has to be possible. It still has to fit the context.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. So Safa and Marwa are two mountains that I found in Mecca.
Okay, fine. So tell me what's Safa and Marwa got to do with فلا جناح عليه أن يتوفى فلا جناح عليه أن يتوفى بهما ومن تدوع خيرا. What has mountains got to do with khayran? Let's just start there. What's mountains got to do with khayran?
No problem. So, okay. So, no problem. So, from my worldview and from my hypothesis, that the doing tawaf between Safa and Marwa is a rite of pilgrimage and a ritual of pilgrimage, and doing this is a good thing, basically, in the eyes of God, as He's prescribed it for you in the Quran to do tawaf between.
No, but see, hold on. That's just too easy. You're saying it's good because God said so. That's too easy.
Yeah.
Like, look, no.
Do you want to argue about divine command theory now?
No.
Like,
Well, what I can argue about is what we have evidence for in the Quran. What we have evidence for in the Quran is the only things God calls khair in the Quran are good things that you do for other people. That's the only thing He calls khair. Good things, good deeds that you do for other people. Or possibly, even if you abstain from transgressing against other people. Those are the only two things that we find in the Quran. So what you want to insert in the Quran is this idea of a ritual that does neither good for other people, neither prevents you from transgressing to other people. And that's not the language of the Quran. So it's like you're inserting.
so do you deny that Hajj? So do you deny that Hajj has any rituals?
The Hajj that I know of in the Quran is to basically host some people and to convey the message to the people. And again, notice
So
one second. Notice the key factor here, which is people. See, you're doing this, you're doing A for the betterment of other people. Like you're hosting other people. See, it benefits those people. You teach them the deen, it benefits those people. But what you're talking about is you simply visiting a building and going around that building. Who the hell does that benefit?
Okay, so you would disagree that there's any rituals within Hajj and such, right? So what do you say about what I would understand to be the shaving of the head in Surah Al-Baqarah 196?
Okay, that one is another. I'm glad you brought that up. So if we go to chat, so is it 2196? Because there's another verse that makes that easier to understand. One moment. Do not share.
Also, if can someone serve a mute Ultimate Truth or vegan mute himself? There's a bit of a background noise.
So if you guys go to 4827, you will have an understanding of what this so-called quote-unquote shaving your head actually is. So it says, and certainly God fulfilled his messenger's vision in truth. Surely you will enter Masjid al-Haram, if God willed, once peaceful and secure.
Which verse? Sorry. Which verse? Sorry. I don't want to interrupt you, but which verse? Sorry, so we can quote it in
48:27. So it says, I repeat, certainly spoke the truth, fulfilled God his messenger's vision in truth. Surely you will enter the Masjid al-Haram, if God willed, once peaceful and secure. And then we have muhalliqina ru'usakum here. But remember what came before. Once peaceful and secure. Remember that part. Muhalliqina have shaved ru'usakum, your heads. Wa muqassarina, and those who cut short. Now listen to this part. La takhafuna, not you fearing. Fa'allima ma lam ta'lamu, but he knew what you did not know. Faja'ala min duni, and he made from besides ذلك فتحا قريبا, from besides that a victory near. So what we find here is muhalliqina ru'usakum is associated with one's peaceful and secure and not fearing. See? Peaceful and secure and not fearing. So talking about peaceful and secure and not fearing can have what to do with shaving your head? What can that possibly have to do with that? See, this is how I always catch out people when they try this mystical, magical Arabic stuff. Because when I read the context, it's always clear. So, peaceful and secure.
Mystical, magical Arabic.
Yeah, that's a thing people like to do. 1 second, man. So one's peaceful and secure and not fearing. That's the key point here. So ru'usakum. Let me start with ru'usakum. Your heads. What can your heads mean? Your heads can either mean literally your head, or it could mean your heads as in your leaders, your chieftains. We use this term till today, heads of state. See? And now all of a sudden, when you think of it in that term, like your heads as in your leaders, and not fearing and peaceful and secure, all of a sudden you start to see how it connects. So muhalliqina can also mean, not only does it mean having shaved, but it can also mean to where's the word? Where's the word? Yeah, like to draw, to encircle, like to draw near. Yeah, to cancel. Yeah, to encircle or to draw near. So basically,
Where do you get that definition?
And halaqa, go to the root word definition. It's all in there.
Can you post any of this?
Wait a minute. Yeah, to encroach. So to encroach your heads. So
sorry, I'm not aware of what the English word.
Man.
I'm just asking. What is the English word encroach mean? I'm not aware of what that means.
Encroach. Look it up. I don't really know how to explain that right now. To encroach is like to draw. To encroach is like to draw near, to be very close to something.
I
So-
see. It's similar to approach, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So to encroach your heads and to encircle them, not fearing. So in short, God is basically saying that you will be able, the very same people who persecuted you guys, you will be able to, whilst being peaceful and secure, you will be able to encroach these people and encircle them without fearing. In a nutshell, so it's simply to do with the heads or the chiefs or the captains of the mushrikeen, and it's simply encouraging the Muslims not to fear them, and that they will be able to encroach these very same people and encroach them without fearing. That's all. Has nothing to do with actually shaving your head. And in fact, again, if we stick to not only the context that I showed you, but also the wider context of the Quran, I mean, the messenger simply went back home to the place where he got persecuted from. There were people who thought, they were high and mighty who persecuted them. And those very same people who thought they were high and mighty, the messenger and the poor people that they thought that they could bully will now be able to encircle them. So that makes sense considering the wider context of the Quran. That makes sense with the word peaceful and not fearing. And again, shaving your head has nothing to do with like not only that context but the wider context of the Quran.
Right, no problem. So, when you go back to 2196 and we look at the context of the shaving of the head, quote unquote, let's keep it as تحلق رؤوسكم. What does it mean when it says فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أو به أذى من رأسه? So whoever from you is ill, has a harm or a issue from his head. What is that? What is that? Can you explain that in context to us?
Like you said, it's whoever is ill or receives an injury from his head, from his like a tribe leader. Like it's still talking about being prevented by these mushrikeen. So it's two situations: either A, you're ill, so you cannot join this this mission that the prophet and the followers are doing, or B, you're basically you're basically injured by your like your tribal leader, like your leader, your head, not your physical head, but because there were still tribes, so they still had tribal leaders in the other side of the fence. So either injury or basically being prevented by your tribal leader. That's what it's referring to.
So why is there a ransom for this of fasting, or a charity, or a sacrifice, for this?
Because what they are doing is something good. So if you cannot join them and do this good thing with them, which is to basically spread the message, then at least what you need to do is you need to abstain and engage with the Quran, or you need to give charity, or you need to do other forms of good deeds.
Okay, Maverick. So, do you have any other topics you kind of want to delve into, or do you want to give more general summarized closing statements, and then basically answer the questions of the audience, and then we can have more of an open discussion with the audience? Would you like to do that, or would you?
I want you to compare mine and your argument, and make me see why
Right.
you're
Yeah, I think that's what the closing statements are for, right? If we keep going at a back and forth, we're not really gonna come to a conclusion based off the statements, right? But it's up to you. I think that's the best idea.
I think the debate is kind of reaching whatever. I think make closing statements, inshallah, and then we'll open the floor for questions, or anyone if they like a comment. Please message one of the admins to take a turn.
Yep, in VC1 chat. All right, so Maverick, do you want to go first, or do you want me? Up to you, boss. All right.
My closing statement is that I stick to the Quran, number one, and I stick to the patterns that I find in the Quran. So, like I explained, I found that we are referring to, when it comes to Hajj, there are two messengers in particular. Those two messengers in particular, they observed the Hajj with mankind rather than strictly believers. They host these people with a feast, and being messengers, they would obviously. I don't see how this part is arguable. Being messengers, they would convey the message. That's literally their job. So again, with the Safa and Marwa, I tried to be consistent with where I found sha'air associated with Hajj, and I found that with Abraham, sha'air associated with Hajj seems to be the animals being slaughtered. But again, I like to take preponderance of evidence. So what I found that with Prophet Muhammad, what he actually does, and his followers, what they actually do when they go to Masjid al-Haram is they slaughter an animal. So that's another connection there. So what else do I need to say really? So yeah, I mean, my whole thing is, as long as you stick to the immediate context, whatever word is in question, as long as you stick to the immediate context, you find other examples of what the word can mean in other contexts. Always bear in mind the context, and as long as you then you stick to the wider context, meaning the theme of the Quran. I find the Quran pretty simple and straightforward. That's that.
Thank you so much, Maverick. All right, so I'll close up here and basically summarize my beginning point and the conclusions we made from these points. I'll try to do as best as possible, but it's going to be a bit janky. So the main points I made was arguments from traditional precedents, where I quoted previous scripture and tradition of people of the book. Arguments I made was proving that Masjid al-Haram is in a certain location, rather than multiple locations or a non-actual location. I'm talking about the house of God being a physical place or a physical thing. Also referred to alternative inconsistencies with the alternative view of Hajj, and basically the deal of what Hajj is and what Hajj prohibits, and see if goes in line with the Maverick's view. Also, a very important point that I brought up was the methodology taken to understand the Quran, which was basically, from Maverick's point of view, you should, like, to understand the verse, you don't really have to define the words, but more just look at the immediate context as principles of communication and such, right? But I take a different methodology where I think it should be more important to actually define words to understand sentences perfectly, and understand their usage in and out of the same sentence and different contexts. And into that same point, I think, my own personal opinion, I don't think the term Safa and Marwa were individually properly defined. I don't think Umrah was proven to mean promotion linguistically. The Tawaf, I don't think his understanding of Tawaf was linguistically proven. He never clearly defined Hajj with a certain word or phrase that we can go with, rather than rather he did use explanation in sentences to try and define one simple word. So that's basically to do with the methodology of understanding and defining words. And that basically sums up like the gist of the issue we came to, and the roadblock that we came to, which was defining words and putting them in context, etc., etc. So hopefully we can go into more of that in the post-debate discussion, or maybe it can be addressed in Q&A and such. But I'd like to thank everyone for listening in, and like to thank Maverick for joining this discussion. And everything that was good came from Allah, and everything that was bad was from me. And thank you all.
Do we have anybody on the list for any comments? I know Ultimate, you want to ask questions while we get somebody else.
All right, we will now take questions. Yeah, Osama, shoot your question, bro.
Yeah, it's simply not to encroach your heads. Your heads being your captains, if you like, until the slaughter, shall we say, has reached its destination. I beg your pardon? Yes, muhallaqu. I would define that as encroach, because one, I find that in the root word, but secondly, see the whole, as you guys know, the way the Arabic root word system works is you have a few possible meanings which tend to be similar in meaning, basically, what the word can mean. So when you say shave, for instance, and when you say encroach, if you think about it, when you're shaving your head, you're literally encroaching every single piece of hair. That's what you're doing. You're encroaching them. So it's simply, it has the same meaning, but depending on the context is how you determine which word befits best. So what I brought up was I think 48:27, and it's talking about basically being peaceful and secure, and not being in fear. So being peaceful and secure and not being in fear can't possibly have anything to do with shaving your head, literally. I don't see how that could be possible. However, encroaching your heads, as in your chieftains, the very same people that persecuted you, that is very befitting. So that's my line of argument.
Okay, thank you, brother Zailura. Go ahead.
So I wanted to go to the Psalm argument. So Psalms argument. So do you believe, Maverick, it is a coincidence that the Quran mentions the house of God and the Psalms mentions the house of God, and the Quran says it's Bakka and the Quran says it's Bakka, and then like all these coincidences, and Psalm it says pilgrimage to this house in Bakka, Quran says pilgrimage to this house in Bakka, and what pilgrimage is like in Psalms it's obviously that's literally pilgrimage, right? So do you believe that it's a coincidence that all these terms are in Psalms and in the Quran? Do you believe it's a coincidence? And do you reject this as evidence or not?
I just quickly checked the verse, whether the verse said Bayt Allah. I'm not, I can't find that actually. So maybe you can find that.
Where?
You said house of God. I can't find that in the
Yes.
Quran.
Oh, okay. I'll show you.
Okay.
That's okay.
But secondly, again, like the Bible is not a criteria for me at all. Like I'm not concerned what it says there, frankly.
Okay, so but I didn't ask you if it's a criteria or if you take it as an absolute authority. I asked you if you do believe it's a coincidence that all these terms are mentioned in the Quran and in the Psalms and in the same thing. Like I asked you, do you reject? I asked you, do you reject this in evidence, and do you believe it is a coincidence? This is the two questions I asked you. I didn't ask you if you believe the Psalms is a hujjah upon
If you're
you.
trying to speak, we can't hear you, bro.
Huh?
Wait, who?
Bro, Ahmed, that's just you. We
Zarura's
We can
unmuted.
hear.
I think
That's
he's
it,
trying to say something.
it's just you, Ahmed. We can hear Zalura.
Okay, go ahead,
Oh,
Maverick.
okay. My bad.
Answer my question.
First of all, I don't know what coincidence you're referring to, because like I said, I don't find in the Quran that it talks about house of God. I don't find that term in the Quran. Like I said, you can find that term for me. And secondly, the term Becca, can that be a coincidence? Sure, no problem. It can be a coincidence. It is just one word after all. And thirdly, yeah, the Bible is not like it's like talking to me about Harry Potter. Like I don't see what relevance it has.
Okay, so
Okay, so
in Surah Al-Quraysh it says, then let them serve the Lord of this house, right? I thought that I know it doesn't say house of God or something exact similar, but obviously the same meaning, the house of God or the house which like this God of the house, right? So in Surah Al-Quraysh it literally says the Lord of this house, right? So and Ishmael and Abraham, it's described how they like you make the foundations and stuff, right? And they purify the stuff around the house or around the bait, right? So the house concept is very clear there, all right? It's like something for God, right? It's very clear that, and God says the house is the first masjid to be established. No, the first place for worship for mankind is the one in Becca, right? So, and this not just some random place, right? It's the first one, right? So we have again, you said so. I shown you from the Quran that it's obviously like a house connected, a connection like which has a
Sorry,
connection like
where did you get the term worship?
yeah.
Where did you get the term worship?
Well, in what context did I mention worship? I forgot.
You just said something, the first house for worship, something along those lines.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yes. The first house for worship or something was placed in Becca.
Where did you get the term worship?
I look up the literal verse. 1 second. Okay. The first house was set up for mankind. Was it as Becca, blessed and guidance for all mankind? Okay, it doesn't say worship. My bad. But it says blessed and guidance for all mankind. Right. So the first house set up for mankind was it as Becca. Right. So it's not just some random bait, it's a special like first one, right? So and it clearly says, Rabb al-Hada al-Bayt, the Lord of this house, etc. And Ishmael and Abraham made this house, etc. Right? Very obvious that this house
Yeah,
is
but the
one
Lord
thing.
of this
One second,
house,
one second, one second,
Lord
one
of this
second,
house is very
one second,
different.
one second, one second, one second, one second. So it's clearly has this bait has a very obvious connection with God, right? Something to do with God. So and when it says house of God in the Bible, no Jew believes, oh, God is living in this house or something. Obviously, the Bible is full of metaphors, etc., and how they spoke, right? So I'm just showing you house connection with God. We got this in the Quran, and we got this in the Bible. We got
Yeah,
Baka.
Zalura,
We got one second. We got Baka in the Quran and this house, and we got Baka in the Bible and this house, and then we got Hajj, we have got the pilgrims in the verse in Psalms, and we got, according to me, also a Hajj in which I said as pilgrimage in the Quran. Okay, and it's so these. If you so, I ask you, do you believe are those coincidences?
and can I make a comment on Zalura's point that he brought up, and to a point that Maverick talked about. So what Maverick said is like, oh, I don't think it's like that much of a coincidence that like Becca's mentioned in both. That's not these only two terms that I mentioned. Specifically, it talks about the valley of Becca, which the Quran makes it very clear. The valley of the Bibatan Mecca refers to the Wadi, the valley in which Becca resides in. Quran makes it very clear on that point. So it's a specific place it's talking about.
So is
And to
Mecca and
Zalura's point,
Becca now?
sorry?
Is Mecca and Becca the same thing now?
Yes.
What, because you say so?
No, not because I say so. Because
No,
the evidence points towards this.
Huh?
Not because I say so, but because the evidence points towards it.
What evidence?
Okay, so we know that the bait is in Mecca, but God says in another verse that the bait
Sorry, where does it say the bait is in Mecca?
is Masjid al-Haram.
فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. About Quraysh, Quraysh lived in what would you call Mecca, right?
No, but hold
And
on.
هذا البيت is in
Yeah, but هذا البيت, as I made my argument before, bait does not have to mean a building. So where do we go from here? In fact, it's on you to prove that it's a building.
Yeah, but
that wasn't the contention. That wasn't the contention. The contention was that the bait in Surat Quraysh is the same bait that's referred to as in Mecca, and we use this as a point to prove that Mecca and the verse that says Bibat Mecca are the same place.
But you see, when you say place, that's literally what I'm arguing against. Like, you need to prove that it's a building.
okay, the first house
It has nothing to do with a place.
the first one, it literally says in the verse, the first bait set up for mankind was that at Mecca.
In Mecca, in a place.
No
But
problem.
let's not dwell too much. By the way, like let Maverick like give his proper answers, Alura, and I'll be quiet as well, and then we can move on to another question. I don't want to.
Okay.
So Maverick, yeah. So I think
Okay,
Maverick
I
knows the
mean-
question clearly. So go ahead.
All right, I'll just okay. Becca, to start with that, Um, I have no problem with that being a coincidence. We are just talking about a single word for after all. The Lord of this bait is not the same thing as house of God, as you said. And secondly, I don't even accept that bait has anything to do with a quote unquote house. So I don't accept that at all. Thirdly, you said that the first bait was set up in Becca, which is a place. Okay, no problem. But that doesn't mean that the bait is not. It doesn't mean that the bait is a house that's not movable. I'm arguing that the bait is not a house. So as well as it being first set up in, let's say, Becca, it was also set up in other places because it's not a house. So again, if you say otherwise, you would have to prove it. What else do I need to respond to? As for the
All
Bible,
right, so I
again,
think
yeah, as for the Bible, really and truly, I think we would do better by moving on from that because I don't think it's much of an argument at all.
all right, okay. So just actually, I won't make any further comments. So does anyone wanna talk about any other questions? Yeah, peace be upon you, brother. Go ahead. No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead. Mm, yeah. I think keep it up for the Q&A session, and then we'll close it up after like questions are kind of dying out, if you can. All right, I'll try and summarize. Like, I'll reword the question for you. Ultimate truth. Correct me if this is not your question, because it has to be a specific question to Maverick in the format of the Q&A. So I'll try and reword your statements into a question, and tell me if that's your question or not. So basically, Maverick, I think ultimate truth is asking you. I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So that was Ultimate Truth's comment that he wanted to make. And Maverick, if you want, can respond to that. Otherwise, we can...
Respond to what?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So Maverick, Ultimate Truth made a point about made a claim that you have an internal contradiction within your understanding of Hajj because you made a claim that's to An-Nas, right? And you said Abraham was inviting to all of mankind, and that we both agreed upon that, right? But then in another part of your argument, you say it's only to the non-believers, to the mushrikeen, because it's supposed to be inviting to Islam. Ultimate Truth, correct me if I'm wrong, if that wasn't your comment, right? I believe that was your final comment, right? Yeah, sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm not saying only to the non-believers. I'm not saying only to the non-believers. I'm saying to the mankind as opposed to strictly to the Muslims. See, right now it's understood as strictly to the Muslims, but we can find from Abraham and Muhammad is that it was at least at minimum to the mankind rather than strictly to the Muslims. Simple.
So you had to invite to Islam to Muslims as well, all of mankind.
Well, I wouldn't argue that he's inviting Muslims to Islam, but I mean, since you guys are gonna make a big song and dance out of that, I'll leave it as mankind because my argument still remains.
All right, no problem. I think. Does anyone else wanna speak up or have a comment or question? If not, we can try and.
Go
I
ahead.
just wanna. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there's like no one else because after we start like an open discussion, you know what I mean? I think Paragon said before he had a question. I don't know if he still has his question.
I've got a
Um.
question to ask.
Oh, Darth Vader. Yeah. Okay, no problem. Go ahead.
Right, so I'm assuming everybody agrees that Hajj used to take place prior to the revelation of Surah Baqarah.
Mhm.
So what was Hajj prior to Surah Baqarah coming out?
What is the question? Well, first of all, is your question directed to who specifically? Like, and also is
Anybody who wants to take it? Both parties, I guess.
all right. So, I would argue that Hajj itself is a followed down tradition from the time of Abraham, and the commandment for Hajj was to be made for the people that Muhammad was preaching to. Was made when the Quranic verses about Hajj was revealed. I don't think they had the full detail on Hajj until it was spoken about within their revelation, right? But I do believe it is a tradition that's passed on from Abraham. As we know, Abraham did have his like own Hajj, right? He did his own pilgrimage. As the verse that says, for one to do Hajj if they are capable, is right after the verse that talks about Abraham setting up his station in Becca, right? So that's my question. I hope it was satisfactory.
So what I'm trying to get to is, if it was an established practice, then surely
Mhm.
everybody knows what it is. So what would be the need for the Quran revelation?
Right. So I don't say it was like it was in its perfect state from the time of Abraham to the time of Muhammad, right? But I think
So
that the concept itself carried through the scriptures, but
so
the
would you
full
agree that
details
it
didn't
was
carry through.
corrupted, or the
I'm sorry.
purpose of Hajj was corrupted?
The purpose, I don't think the purpose was corrupted. I think the details of it might have been, but I think the purpose, like the as in a rite of passage and a pilgrimage for one to God, right? I think that concept did actually carry through since the time of Abraham, even if the polytheists were doing pilgrimage, right? So I think that concept itself, the main purpose, did carry through.
So you think that the polytheists were also doing Hajj the way Abraham had left it?
No, so I don't think they're the same way. I just think the main concept of it was there. The concept of pilgrimage, it's carried through scripture. both in previous scripture and through tradition, right? Or here, like foretell of previous generations. But obviously, I don't claim that it was in the same state in the time of Abraham all the way through, right? Because that would
So
be a bit of
would
too
have
much of a claim.
clarified that.
Yeah, it would have clarified, purified the details, right? Because, like as we know, Muhammad himself, like he was a Gentile, right? He wasn't fully aware of the rites of pilgrimage and everything and how to perform it, right? And God gave him
But
these
was he
revelations.
the right to do Hajj?
Sorry?
Was he not fighting for the right to do Hajj? Is that not why he had to move?
Yeah,
So he would have known about it, right?
yeah, I guess so.
So
Like I
what
said,
was
like the
different
concept of
about his
Hajj
Hajj?
followed through. The concept of
So,
pilgrimage came through, but the
yeah,
details
so what
weren't
was
there.
different about his Hajj compared to the polytheist Hajj?
Right, so maybe the polytheists may have had so many rituals that God actually didn't authorize for them to do. Maybe they had a lot of pagan stuff included. Maybe they did sacrifices to pagan gods. Maybe it included a lot of like pagan idols and such, right? Or they did different things during the Hajj process. But what
Could it
God
be that
basically
they were
purified the
doing Hajj the
ritual.
way we're doing Hajj now?
Sorry.
Could it be that they were doing Hajj the way we're doing it now, in like a ritualistic mode, if you know what I mean?
Well, I believe the correct Hajj is ritualistic. So
Okay.
yeah, yes, I believe this is like both like the Hajj that should be done today is ritualistic, and so is the one that Muhammad did, right?
And the polytheists also did a ritualistic Hajj.
Yeah, yeah. They just didn't do the
Okay.
correct rituals, or maybe all of the rituals, or maybe it's different rituals, or maybe rituals God didn't prescribe, right? Is that like the question, right? That was the kind of the question.
Yeah. I just
Okay,
find it
yeah.
interesting that God would have to clarify or correct what they were doing. So to me, that kind of like indicates that what they were doing was wrong.
Right. Okay, yeah. I see your point. All right, thanks for asking a question and all that.
I have
Does
a
anyone
question.
else have a comment? I'll go ahead, Mustafa.
I don't know if because I've been in and out, so I'm not sure if this was already addressed, but I feel like it's very important in terms of Moses and his hajjs when it comes to getting married. Um, did you guys talk about if it's a time frame? Do you agree? No?
We actually
How does
didn't go to that verse because I didn't think it would cause. I don't think it would have like had much benefit going to from Maverick's methodology of using the words right. So, but you can try and have that conversation if you want.
like for me, he was getting married, so essentially he's broke. He has no money. So the part of the agreement was to work for her father for a period of 8 hajjs, right? Or 7, I'm not sure. So that's a
It's
time
eight.
frame. Yeah. So I'm wondering like, how can you, in your definition, Maverick, put that as a time frame when it comes to that verse?
And Yasmin bought like. I think my definition was discourse. And to be honest, I think that term is actually quite befitting in that context. 8 discourses, and what those discourses are is obviously something to do with the sort of job that the father-in-law was engaged in. So 8 discourses to do with the with the job that the father-in-law was engaged in. I think that's quite befitting. I mean, in fact, the alternative is what? Pilgrimage. How are you going to fit that in there?
Because that's a time frame. Essentially, I'm telling somebody to work for me for 8 years. If I tell somebody to work for me for 8 disagreements or 8 discords, that doesn't. I
Not
don't know.
discourse.
Yeah, discords. How am I signifying a time frame with that word? Because it's clear what the challenge is. The challenge is to work for me because you want to marry my daughter. Now the question becomes for how long? For 8 hajjs.
Well, in fact, I'm very convinced that my definition is much more befitting here, because at least when we say 8 discourses and we are talking about the job that the father-in-law is asking Moses to do, we know what he's talking about. So we know that the discourse will be something relating to the job. However, when we say pilgrimage, then you have to introduce that whole idea of pilgrimage in the first place. Like, when is Moses ever connected to this thing called pilgrimage? When is Moses associated with this particular sacred place that is to be visited, etc.? Like, you see, words like pilgrimage, they're not words that you use every day. They are words that have an entire narrative attached to it. So when you say pilgrimage, you have to give the narrative. You can't just throw the word. Like, there is no evidence that Moses knows anything about the term pilgrimage, nor is there evidence that
Oh,
the
can I?
Father knows anything about the term
Well,
pilgrimage.
that would be
Hey,
only if your only source of information is the Quran. We have actually a
Which
very
it
clear.
is. Which it
Well,
is.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying your only source of information is the Quran, which is a like bit of a ridiculous position, right? I have clear ground to stand on. That I have like much evidences from previous scripture that Moses had everything to do with pilgrimage to a sacred site and such, right? So you're saying that's inconsistent in
But
my
see,
view,
this
but
is
I
the
have a ground
thing.
to stand on.
Your argument seems to always be outside of the Quran, and I'm afraid, like, I don't know
No,
who.
but you're saying no, but you were telling me, or not telling me specifically, but telling people who say it's pilgrimage that we have no showing of Moses have anything to do with pilgrimage, right? Or going to a certain place, right? Or doing this certain thing, but that's
Yes,
presupposing your methodology.
from the Quran.
Okay, yeah, that's just presupposing your epistemology. So
But
that's
of
the
course,
issue.
I would go by my methodology. Am I supposed to go by someone else's methodology?
Okay, look, it's
No,
still
but
my turn.
you can't do it. You can't. Okay, go ahead, Mustafa. Sorry.
In the end, I don't care how you want to define Hajj or if you want to say it's obligatory. All I'm saying is, even today, if you tell me like for 8 Hajjs or 7 Eids or whatever, you're telling me a time frame for how long I have to do this. And whether we believe it or not, like the people do establish that as a reoccurring event every year, even back then.
I mean, the thing is, again, my concern is evidence, not what people practice. And
Fine. Do I have to show you evidence today
but
that Hajj
hear me out.
happens once a
Just
year?
one moment. No, yeah, but you have to show me from the Quran. You see, my thing is this. Yeah, my thing is this. I'm a Muslim because of the Quran, not because of any other book. The whole reason I'm a Muslim is because I'm convinced of this book. So my knowledge of this deen comes from this book. The moment you go outside of this book, it's like a foreign language to me. And I don't see, like, even if you can get evidence from the Quran that you have authority to go outside of this book, that would be a different argument. But until you do, I suggest we discuss the Quran.
All right. So do you wanna? Okay, there's actually, well, that's obviously not the topic right now. But would you like to hold that discussion another day, with Quran authorizes sources of information outside of it to do with religion and such? If you want, we can have that discussion another week. But yeah,
Sorry, about what in particular?
about whether the Quran authorizes other sources of information to take from or use as evidences, or
No. It's not used as evidences. Like, when you say used as evidences, I know the Quran references the Psalms, for instance. I know that. But that ain't the argument here. The argument here is whether we are supposed to use any other source as evidence or as a criteria of some kind. I don't think you can get that authority from the Quran. I mean, if you can, we can have that discussion anytime you wish.
yeah, inshallah, we'll do it another day. Inshallah, I'm very willing to do that again.
Maverick, there's a verse that says, "We sent down only we inspired and sent only men as messengers," or something, right? And if you do not know, then go ask the people of the dhikr, all right? So God is speaking to Muhammad and says, if you doubt that we only sent men before, go ask the people of the dhikr, the people of the reminder they have, like people of the scripture, right? So God is telling him, as hypothetical, if you doubt, then go to the people of the scripture for asking them, did God really send only men before? So God is telling the prophet to go to the people of the dhikr for the evidence to stop his doubt, right? Of course, I know there's a hypothetical from God to
No.
prophet.
I
And just
appreciate.
one second.
I appreciate that you brought
One
that
second,
verse.
one second. But if this thing of like outside of Quran evidence would not exist, then God would not make this hypothetical question to the prophet. So I would say I have now demonstrated that evidences outside of the Quran from the people of the dhikr is valid.
Okay, I'm glad that you brought that verse actually, and that verse proves my point that God is very, very particular with the things that He says. So it's a very, very particular thing that God told the messenger to ask the people of the book. Very particular thing, which was like you stated yourself, i.e., were there men that God sent previously? That's all. It's a very specific question. So I have no problem with that. Again, I already told you that God even cites the Psalms. So I don't have but God is very particular. There's a reason why He's particular. So I follow the Quran to the T. It's particular, and if you're talking about in those particular circumstances, yes. If you go outside of those particular circumstances, you have to reference the Quran from as authority.
So you don't think the Quran references the previous books as a source of authority as the actual book itself, rather than just specific verses or specific topics, right?
It's
Is that what you're
very
saying?
specific verses and specific topics.
So what about when God tells the people of the book to judge by the Injil and the Torah, referring to the book in totality? And whoever does not judge by them, they are the kuffar or the kafirun.
Oh, sorry, it's not now.
Yep. He's telling them at that particular time. He knows what gospel they hold. Do you?
Yeah,
Okay, that's on you. I don't know how you know that. I don't.
right. Because of historical evidence, we know that the Gospels in the 7th century are the exact same Gospels we have today because of manuscript evidence.
Fine. If you are satisfied with that, then you are satisfied with that. But fact of the matter remains that God told them to judge by it. And I think even that was a particular thing. But I may be incorrect. But I may be incorrect. But fact of the matter remains, it told them to judge by it. I don't know why we, as Muslims, would have that discussion.
Okay. So, Maverick, would God command the people to judge by falsehood? No, He wouldn't. He would judge. God would tell them to judge by what is true. So, if He tells them to judge by the Torah, then the Torah has to be true. So, when when God says, why do they come to you for judgment? Is not God's judgment in the Torah. So this means God's judgment is in those Torah, right? So they have a correct Torah. So how can you say, okay, this Torah is now completely like?
I'm not saying anything that's not found in the Quran, my friend. If you wanna follow other scriptures, then please go right ahead.
Okay.
But fact of the matter is, for me, I don't have that authority from the Quran.
Okay. But the question is the Quran confirms this as a book from God, right?
Well, you have the confirmation. So would you? Well, look, why are you arguing with me? Like, just give me a verse. Just give me a verse that tells me to go and follow those books. I don't understand.
Bro, if I show you a verse that says the Torah is to be judged by the Jews, okay, God tells the Jews to judge by something.
Well, I'm not a Jew.
Bro, but God wouldn't. God wouldn't tell the Jews to judge by falsehood.
No, you're doing. God wouldn't do this. God wouldn't do that. Fact of the matter remains, God is speaking to the Jews.
Okay, no problem. Okay, no problem.
Those are the facts.
Okay. God is telling the Jews to judge by the Torah, and God would not tell the people to judge by falsehood. So this means the Torah has to be something true, and if it's something true, then it's valid evidence, because if it's true, then it's true scripture from God, and something from God is valid evidence.
But I don't understand why you're telling me what you are
the Torah can be used evidence by me.
Okay, but listen. If you're convinced by it, go ahead. Why are you telling me what you're convinced by?
Because I'm demonstrating to you that the evidence for outside of the Quran is there.
But look, there is no evidence in the Quran.
I just told you.
No. There's no evidence. I don't care about your reasoning. Those are your reasonings.
I didn't quote the verse. What do you mean?
No.
He
You
didn't. He
talked
didn't
about
reason. He wasn't his reasoning. He made a premise by premise deduction.
the
He said
the
God.
verse specifically said the Jews. I'm not a Jew.
No, no,
End of
Oh, doesn't
no,
discussion.
no,
mean
no.
the book is
That's
true
not his
because it's
claim. That's not
true.
his claim. Zadura. That's not his claim.
Yeah, but then
I
it's
mean,
not for me to
Maverick,
cite it.
Maverick.
That's it.
That's not his claim. Maverick. That's
No,
not
you're
his
talking
claim.
about his reasoning.
His claim
I've
is one
heard his
second.
reasoning.
Listen. Just one. He has a deductive premise by premise argument, right?
Yeah, but
And
those
if
are
it's
his
you have
reasoning, though.
it's not a reasoning. It's a premise by premise deduction, right? So you have
So
to
premise
you
by
have to
premise
prove
that deduction is not reasoning.
second,
Like, what the hell?
one
Why are you
second,
acting like it's two different things?
brother.
I
Just let me
just
finish.
interject
Like,
for a
let me
second?
finish, brother.
Could I
Listen.
interject?
So
You're arguing with me like, oh, you should follow the people of the.
no,
I don't
listen. That's not what I said.
understand.
Listen, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. Maverick,
So why
just
are we
chill.
having this argument
So
about the Bible for so long?
listen. Just
I don't
one
even think you
second.
should
Just
have carried
let me
for this.
finish,
It's not worth it.
brother. Let me just let me finish my sentence.
We're arguing
So
about the Bible.
brother, you've interrupted me like 10 times in the past 30 seconds. Come on, let me just finish. So Zadura was making a premise by premise deduction, and he wasn't making like he didn't mention anything about whether the Jews follow or this follow it, right? He made a premise by premise deduction, proving it's truthful. He said God doesn't tell people to judge by something that is false, right? And I think everyone can agree on that. And we can agree from the verse, God tells people to judge by the Torah. God tells the Jews to judge by the Torah. Therefore, by first premise to second premise, we can conclude that the Torah is true, right? Because God doesn't God doesn't tell people to judge things that are false. You have to show how it's either non sequitur or how the premises don't follow from the conclusion.
But do you know what the Torah is, though?
Can I come in for a
Yeah,
second?
No. How do you know?
the books of the Jews.
How do you know?
The books of the
How do you
Jews.
know?
The Quran
How
says
do you know it's a
Torah
book?
is the books of the Jews.
How do you know it's a book?
Maverick, let me come in for a second.
Go ahead.
So in the UK, we have like Muslims wanting to rule by Sharia law, for instance. So they want Sharia law for themselves. Now, if the UK was to say, okay, Muslims, we will allow them to judge their affairs by Sharia law, that doesn't mean that the UK is saying that the Quran is true. That's just saying for those people, they can, have their laws, for instance. That's all that verse is saying.
Bro,
I'll
no.
tell you why that's not analogous. Can I tell you why that's not
Go on, man,
analogous?
bro.
Because
It's from-
wait. Can I tell you why it's not analogous? Because the British government doesn't believe that the Quran came from God. We believe, as Muslims, we believe the Torah originally came from God.
Yeah,
It's
and the
not
government
analogous.
and the government doesn't even care if you judge by truth or falsehood. So it's completely irrelevant for the judgment. For the the premise is that God wouldn't command you to judge by falsehood, but the government can tell you to judge by falsehood because the government doesn't care. Why should the government care? Oh, this person judged by this book or this book, or they don't care if it's true or not. But obviously, God wouldn't tell somebody to judge by falsehood. So it's a false analogy.
No.
So it's disanalogous to Zadura's first premise.
What God is saying to the Prophet is don't, enforce the Quranic laws on the Jews and the Christians. So in your society, allow them to judge by their own laws. That's what it's indicating. So we can agree to disagree on interpretation, if you like, but I don't think the argument holds there.
Bro, what you said didn't even disprove the validity of the Torah. You just told that people of the book can judge by their books in our society if you have Muslim Sharia. Okay,
Yes.
no problem.
Yes.
How does it disprove anything?
What do you mean?
How does it? What?
Go ahead, Ultimate Truth. Go ahead, boss. Exactly, but they had their own Sharia. hmm
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Let me get out of my car. I just parked in a gas station, so
No problem.
because I wanted to say something.
No problem.
So
Take your time.
what I was saying is, you're assuming that the Torah that you're saying, that God is telling you this Torah, they wrote with their own hand and said, this is from God. And you know that's not from God. Because God told you that Ishmael was the firstborn, that Ishmael was the one that was being sacrificed. That's not what you read in the Torah.
No, it
The
doesn't say that.
Injil you're seeing, it says it in the Quran. It shows you that one was existing before the other one. It tells you that the one was born after the only one was being sacrificed. If there is an only one, it had to be Ishmael. When Isaac come, now he's not the only one anymore. Ishmael is not the only one anymore. Ishmael will be only the only one if there is no other son.
No,
Then
because
we
it wasn't from the
announce
same
him
lineage.
after
wasn't
the
from-
sacrifice, after the so-called sacrifice, he been announced for a second child. So if you put one and one together, all I was saying is, this is the debate here. The debate is about is about Hajj. Yes, we can demonstrate black on white. God is telling to the people of the book, you will never succeed till you return to your books. 568. God is telling them, judge by the Torah. If you do not judge by the Torah, you become kafirs. Judge by the Injil. Whoever does not judge by the Injil is a kafir. And you're telling them that you cannot judge by your books. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So,
But
coming back to the debate.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We like, I know we disagree on the Bible thing, but we also agree. You agree with me that the Bible contains truth, right? You agree on that, right?
Bukhari too contains truth. Don't you realize that Bible is Bukhari? According to John, according to Mark, according to Abu Huraira. That's not the Injil.
I'm talking about
people confusing the Bible and the Injil.
Listen, ultimate truth, I understand. That's fine. But I'm referring to when I quoted the Psalms 84. You would agree that's a valid argument to quote the Psalms 84 when it's making a specific reference to the same thing that the Quran is making. I can use it as evidence. I'm not saying it's an infallible source. I'm saying I can use it as evidence when it's talking about the same concepts, right? Would you agree on that at least?
I mean,
when I quoted,
if you can do that, you probably can quote somebody can quote Bukhari too. There's some verses, there's some hadiths in the Bukhari that come from the Quran.
No, but that came before. But the Psalms came before, right? That's the point.
Bro,
and it's confirming a Quranic concept.
Hold on, bro. You're pushing the Bible way too hard. I let you make some reference in terms of linguistic evidence or historical evidence, if that even means anything. But this server is called Quran alone. I don't want people bringing any other references, only in passing.
Bro, the
All right. All I was saying is that I was making an argument from absurdity that if there's all these connections about this specific verse, right, or this specific chapter of the Psalms, all these connections that are being made, the specific reference to pilgrimage in the valley of Becca, to do with the house of God and the dwelling of the Lord, all these connections, and I'm saying it's an argument from absurdity to claim that my understanding is incoherent with the scriptures.
No, you got enough. You got enough. You got enough to use the Quran. You said enough. You proved yourself. You have proved yourself. Now look at this. When he was asked to define the Kaaba, the house, he said the house means the plan of God. Is he saying that, and he defined the plan of God, anybody enters the plan of God is succeeding? Is he saying that Satan is not in the plan of God? Is he saying that the kafirs are not in the plans of God? I don't know what he calls plans of God. There's nothing that can escape the plan of God. Now he's saying the plan of God concerns only those the believers. That's what he's assuming. I mean, that should be rebutted. Everybody is in the plan of God. So it cannot be the plan of God. But because he's seeing the plan of God as only for the believers. And no way. Nobody can. Iblis is, Satan is, everybody is, the kafirs, everybody, the mushriks, everybody is in the plan of God. So the bait is not the plan of God. The bait is wisdom. Is when I feel God said, I saved you, the bait, when you ran away to survive economically. Who was he talking to? To the Quraysh. Lila fi Quraysh, ila fi rila shita'i was safe. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Just for me, sorry. Oh, come on. Just for me having saved you the bait, should make you at least worship the God, the Lord of the bait. You ran away.
Exactly.
So the bait is with the Quraysh. Allah is talking to the Quraysh, and he said, I saved you the bait. So you know now I am the Rabb of this bait because you all ran away. I smacked them with some birds, with some rocks, with some clay, whatever it is. They got knocked out. I saved you the bait to survive economically, he's telling them. Economically, this is your source of income.
Yeah.
Although you
repetition,
are an
so-
idol worshiper. So the bait is right there with the Quraysh. Link them with the Quraysh. God is telling us in the Quran. So I don't know where all those ideas coming from. Plans of God, that Shaitan is not part of the plan of God, that the mushrik are not, that everybody is in the plan of God. God is looking at everybody. It includes all of us.
I want
There's a lot of contradiction. Right.
Yeah.
Go
That's a
ahead.
good point, Ultimate Truth. That's a very good point, Ultimate Truth, brother. I would like to actually open up because, like, me personally, I don't want to keep pushing this point. Like, I want to sound like a broken record, but like, I'm genuinely holding to this point. Like, does anyone else who agrees with Maverick, at least that Hajj is not pilgrimage, can someone like define or explain to me what Safa and Marwa is? Like, who doesn't believe in pilgrimage? Anyone in this VC?
Yeah, the Safa and Marwa, it's understandable, yeah, because from your viewpoint it holds a certain importance. But the thing is, like, the viewpoint that Maverick's giving, right, it doesn't hold any significance to us today reading this. So I think that's why, like, it's neither here nor there, this Safa and Marwa. I think that's
So we're not able to understand the Quran. Like, there's so many things. Like, the 9 months, we're not able to understand it. The Safa and Marwa, we're not able to understand it. The rituals of the Hajj, we're not able to understand it. Like,
Yeah, but there's like a lot of things you'll have to admit yourself, yeah, like we don't understand in the Quran, which it's like mostly we read them for the lesson in their stories, and like we don't know what exactly happened, you know. So it's I don't know why you want to push this thing like, okay, you can't understand it now.
well, because because Abu Hamdan, I'll explain to you why. Because there's two worldviews, two hypotheses. I have my hypothesis and his hypothesis. If one hypothesis has a greater explanatory power, meaning that a worldview that is able to explain more verses contextually than another worldview, then I'll take the first worldview as more true because it has more explanatory power, right? If I have the explanatory power to explain more verses and more concepts and everything in these words, then it would be a more consistent view. You understand my point there? But let's delve into the discussion where the Hajj is for. Let's go into the discussion where the Hajj is just for the time. We can go into that discussion.
Because this thing is a different debate then, like, okay, you have more explanations, and then based on other sources, which is fine, like if you're bringing them in, but then that's another debate, yeah, and that's the one we're not really having right now, of other sources, other scriptures.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, that's just like how hypotheses work. Whatever has more explanatory power should be taken to be as more true.
Suspected. Have you
That's
looked for an alternative meaning?
For which? What for what?
Safa and Marwa.
Yeah, I've tried to see linguistic alternatives, and Maverick proposes alternative. I don't see anything that's as consistent as the entire view of pilgrimage and what it has to do with pilgrimage, basically.
So if you were to play devil's advocate for a second, if you were to discard the traditional perspective for a second, what would you say is the next best alternative explanation?
For Safa and Marwa?
Yeah.
The thing is, it's not just from Islamic tradition that you understand Safa and Marwa. I also understand Safa and Marwa from the previous scriptures as well, which is another precedent, right? So there's the alternative, there's another backing for the alternative in the previous scriptures. So I can't ignore that evidence as well. You see what I mean? So
yeah, but if the previous scriptures weren't distorted, there would be no need for the Quran.
That's not true. That's not true. What can you back that claim? Where does the Quran say it came for the specific purpose of only correcting those previous scriptures? That's like saying that's like saying if the Torah had to be corrupted for the Zabur to come, or the Zabur had to be corrupted for the Injil to come.
Yeah.
Right.
What's wrong?
Why? What's the proof for that claim?
So the Quran is here for guidance. But if we already had guidance, what's the point of the Quran then?
No, because the other books didn't have the full guidance of the full Sharia and the universal Sharia. The Torah had the laws of Bani Israel, which is the covenant they took up with God and had their specific laws. It wasn't universal law. It was a covenant they took with God, and the Torah records their history and their own laws that they should uphold, right? But it doesn't serve as a guidance for the worlds, or as a guidance for all the Gentiles, especially, right?
I think that.
And same thing with Jesus. Same thing with Jesus, though. Did Isa not say, "I've come specifically for the lordship of Israel"?
Did he?
Yeah, in the Quran and the Bible, both.
For who?
Lordship of Israel, Bani Israel.
And was that limited to what, a particular bloodline, or was that to a group of people, as in the believers?
The children of Israel.
My definition to the children of Israel and yours will be different. So how can we reconcile that then?
I would argue my understanding of children of Israel has more precedence than yours. Hence, it's has more explanatory power.
A racial claim.
A racial, yeah. What do you mean? Do we not have races? Like, what are you talking about?
Well, what's your claim?
Well, it's not necessarily. I'm claiming that the children of Israel are the descendants of Israel.
So a race, descendants, right? So it's attributed to a particular lineage.
Yeah,
Yes,
I would say so.
But God says multiple times in the Quran, we decreed for the Bani Israel. We said to the Bani Israel, we made this for the Bani Israel. And it's always to the descendants of Israel.
Yeah, so if I was to say to you, if I was to replace that with Muslim, do you understand that may have been a term used to describe the believers or those who migrated with?
No.
How does that linguistically? How does that linguistically follow? What does Israel mean linguistically? See, everyone keeps avoiding this point. Maverick kept avoiding this point as well. Like you can put a word that tries to fit the context, but don't linguistically explain what a word means. So what does Israel mean?
Means those who journeyed for the path of God.
Can you prove that?
Yeah, El meaning God. Isra meaning the journey. So those who journey towards God. It doesn't have to be, limited to a race, a particular race.
Or you know that Israel is Jew from Hebrew. Why are you taking Arabic now? It's to define the Arabic.
This is the whole problem here. We're claiming that it has been corrupted. You're saying no, it hasn't.
The word Israel is corrupted.
No. But we're saying the word but the original word is Yisrael. It's the way that's the original way it's said. The Hebrew word has nothing to do with the journey.
It doesn't have to have anything to do with what the Hebrews claim. We're looking at what
and eel is not God in Arabic either.
Yeah, this debate should have preceded the Hajj debate.
I mean, like that's the problem with when people like reject language, basically. Like that's that's the problem I had with Maverick, right? He rejects the Arabic language as like the authority for the Arabic language, and like so do other people. So like, what's the point of even arguing about the Quran at that point? Like, we know the word El isn't an Arabic word.
Okay, so
yeah,
my question again to you was, if you take the traditional perspective out of the equation for Safa and Marwa, what would you say is the next strongest argument for its definition?
Well, we only have one verse talking about it, so we only have that one verse to go off. I mean, you're asking me to like disregard my view, and what's my next view disregarding the view that I hold? Like,
Do you
I
know
don't know,
why
like,
I'm
what kind
asking
of
that?
question is it? Why?
Hello?
Because I'm trying to understand if you have actually looked for an alternative meaning, or if that's just a claim you're making. And it sounds like it's just.
No, I've gathered I've gathered evidence for my view, and I believe in historical precedent. So that's one of my methodologies that I use. You don't hold to that, right?
So you should be able to give me a definition, but you can't, which shows
Yo,
that you look for one.
hi guys. I was listening from the start. First of all, it's admirable. It's it's pretty civil, no cursing and all that stuff. To answer like if you refer to Psalms, so Psalms is it's from David, right? Dawood. It says rock a lot of times, and from my understanding, Arabic is not my first language. Safa and Marwa is clarity and rock. Am I getting it right?
Depends.
Okay.
Which we can go with that for now. That's fine.
Okay. But yeah, so I grew up Christian. Psalms was basically it's part of worship, right? We get a lot of our lyrics from here. So for example, you go to Psalms. Let's see. There's a lot of them here. Psalms
many
31.
praises of God, songs of
Yep,
God,
yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Here, 31, 3-4. Yes, you are my rock and my protection. For the good of your name, lead me and guide me, etc. You can keep going, and there's a lot more here. Psalms 18, 1-3. I love you, Lord. You are my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my savior. So, in my understanding, mind you, I'm not as well versed as you guys in the Quran. This is from somebody who just started reading the Quran, okay? I haven't read the hadiths, and in my opinion, hadiths should be looked at with care. And Quran, I think it's like saying, look, guys, the past books, they had truths in it. But at the same time, with how politics and everything goes on, some stuff can be corrupted. That's why I think the Quran is very pure. But you're right, we should be referring to some parts of the Bible or the Torah to see if it connects, with the Quran. So one of the things I think to see if it's fabricated or changed, consistency. You see the word rock many times here. It's just a lot of times in the book of Psalms. It's like 15 of them. 15 verses it says the rock. Okay. If I may read it from the Quran, which one is it?
No problem.
Okay.
Which Hebrew word are you referring to? If you know the Hebrew word for, are you referring to Salah? That Hebrew word for rock?
Safa and Marwa, just the rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I can't read Hebrew. I'm reading, like, I think this is
No
NIV.
problem. No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's consistent, man. Rock is my salvation, etc. Okay. So this is the only time we see Safa and Marwa, if I'm correct. Is it Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 158. Safa and Marwa are among the rights of God. So for those who make major or minor pilgrimage to the house is no offense, etc., etc. Okay. Look, man. At least from my understanding, it just says this is what represents God: clarity and rock, good foundation. I think if you look at it into a historical, of course, I don't know. If you were during that time, I think the rock, it's like a common language. That's why it was mentioned only once in the Quran. Like, it was like, do you get what I mean? Like, it's a common lingo. Everybody knows what the rock means. That's why it was meant to be to be just added once. Then, of course, for Mr. Maverick, the argument is hadiths or, modern Islam, without offending anyone, turned this rock into a literal thing. From my understanding, if you perform the Hajj, you have to walk. Am I getting it right? You have to walk between rocks, or is this like pieces of mountains?
Mountains.
It's mountains.
As a symbolism for the rite of passage of Ishmael and Hagar.
Okay.
You're on the right track. Keep going.
But you get what I'm saying, right? It's just simple, at least from my understanding. Of course, I'm just a man reading this book, and I just started. Of course, I always pray. Yeah, but it's just simple, man. It's just clarity and rock. Firmness. That's it. It doesn't have to be literal. That's my understanding. I just wanted to say that. And again, I'm guessing some of you guys are fasting. Those are debating. So it's admirable. It's very hard, man. I tried fasting. It's not easy. And you guys are going on a debate. So yeah, man. Thank you for all the points you guys brought up. Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Bro, Zadara, do you believe in fasting?
Can you guys hear me by any chance?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, wait, before you start, sorry, I don't want to interrupt. But Osama, are you still recording or streaming? Oh, yes, sorry. You can probably, should have probably closed it one. I'll just say the last few things in the stream or whatever. Thanks for everyone for watching. Hope everyone got educated or learned something new from that, from the discussion between me and Maverick. I'd like to thank Maverick for coming on for the discussion and everyone else for participating in the discussion. May Allah guide us all.
One more thing. I just wanted to ask about what did you guys think of Moses performing pilgrimage? What do you guys, from your understanding, was he instructed to go somewhere in a different place and just go to an altar? That's what I'm trying to. I'm not very well versed in the Bible.
Yeah.
So, okay, sure, go ahead. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. Okay. If I may add, at least, again, I'm no expert, right? Mr. Maverick said, Hajj and pilgrimage, same thing, right? Yeah, like definition wise, right? That's what I'm understanding. So Hajj is you go somewhere and you try to bring other people to the faith, right? That's from Mr. Maverick's thing. What if what we're reading, yeah, instead of it like going there to worship like a specific place, He's going there to, like, he's a stranger in different lands, and he's spreading the word like a messenger. I'm just saying. At least that's my understanding. If we look at it through Maverick's